Chapter 659. Gunyenji couldn't help but ask Reinitz, "You look like you're rich. Why did you let Mother Hannah live alone in a place like that?" Reinitz parked the car and turned to look at her with a smile. "What kind of place? You don't think it's a good place?" Gunyenji pouted. "It's too remote. There's no phone, no internet. How can you survive?" Reinitz found it even more hilarious. "The internet only appeared in the last 20 years. You think you can't survive without it? Then were the people from 20 years ago all dead?" His words made sense and Gunyenji was speechless. It was rare for someone to make her speechless, so she was a bit annoyed. She silently followed Reinitz into his home. The house looked like a small castle from the outside, but the interior was surprisingly modern. French glass doors faced the backyard, and the living room had a white leather sofa against the wall. A geometric pattern carpet was spread in the middle of the living room, and the rest of the place revealed the dark red cherry wood floorboards. A large grand piano stood next to the French latticework door. The lights in the house were all built in, and only the dining room had a large paper lotus lantern. The petals overlapped, and the white light leaked out from the petals and projected onto the dining table. Reinitz took Gunyenji up the stairs. "Your bedroom is on the second floor." Gunyenji followed him into the bedroom and realized it was probably the master bedroom of the house. The room had been redecorated, but it still had a puritanical clean style. It was probably Reinitz's former room. When he didn't speak, he gave off the feeling of a puritanical abstinence. Gunyenji refused to stay in Reinitz's bedroom and shook her head. "I'll stay in the guest room. This is the master bedroom, so it's not appropriate for me to stay here." Reinitz looked down at her, his dark blue eyes carrying a hint of hope and expectation. He was silent for a while, then said, "Sirius Ella said that you have to be my immediate family member in order to live with me, and I'll protect you." Gunyenji raised her brows. "So?" He took out a small gold velvet box from his suit pocket and opened it. Inside was a pear-shaped diamond ring of at least 3 carats. The angle of the cut was perfect. As soon as he took it out, it glowed faintly in the sunlight coming through the bedroom window. This was a sign that the diamond was very pure. Gunyenji took a step back. "Reinitz, what are you doing?" Reinitz walked up to her and held her hand. "Just to trick Alice, you have to be my fiancé for the time being." As he spoke, he took out the ring and put it on Gunyenji's left middle finger. This was an engagement ring, which meant that this person was already taken. Gunyenji quickly took off the ring and said, "Didn't you say it was a stopgap measure?" How could he be serious? "I won't keep you company." Reinitz stared at her and shook his head. "Who told you it was true?" "Then this ring." Gunyenji opened her palm. The sparkling pear-shaped diamond ring almost blended in with her fair palm. Reinitz looked down calmly and took the ring from her hand. His warm fingertips gently swept over Gunyenji's palm. Gunyenji didn't feel anything, but Reinitz felt like his fingers had been electrocuted and were about to go numb. He put the ring on her again and said gently, "It's just a prop." Gunyenji finally said, "Oh." She looked at him suspiciously but didn't take it off. Anyway, it was just a stopgap measure. When these people stopped paying so much attention to her, she could find a way to contact the Wuxia Empire. But then again, when would Brother Xiong and the others return from their mission? What about Huishao? And Professor He should be back from home by now, right? Gunyenji remembered that Professor He said he would be back for 2 weeks at most. Now that she thought about it, it had only been 2 weeks. Hijichu had returned home because of his father's illness. Gunyenji had tried to call him but couldn't get through. But his father should be fine now, right? Even if he had to undergo surgery, he should be back by now, right? She could call him, right? But she didn't even have a phone right now, so how could she call him? At most, Professor He would find out that her phone wasn't in the service area and get anxious, right? With that thought in mind, Gunyenji's first night at Reinitz's house was a very restless sleep. She seemed to have had a nightmare, but she didn't scream or cry. She calmly ran and hid in the dark alone, and someone kept chasing her like a shadow. She couldn't escape or shake them off. Later, she ran too fast and fell on the ground, then woke up. After waking up and looking at the unfamiliar room, she immediately forgot what dream she had just had. Raising her hand to look at the watch on her wrist, she saw that it was only 4 in the morning, so she fell asleep again. When she woke up the next day, it was almost noon. Reinitz didn't wake her up and asked the cook to prepare lunch for her. Gunyenji sat at the dining table and pretended to be nonchalant. "Reinitz, do you have internet at home? I'm very bored. Can you let me go online?" Reinitz opened a newspaper and shook his head. "No, I don't have a computer at home either." Gunyenji was speechless. "Isn't that too much? It's not like you can't go online in prison. Gunyenji didn't like it and threw her knife and fork away. I might as well go to prison. Go find ALS and tell him I'm willing to be locked up in prison as long as there's internet. Reinitz closed the newspaper and looked at her with confusion. Having internet is that important to you? Are you trying to kill time, or are you trying to take the opportunity to contact someone? Don't take Al's words lightly. Of course it was both, but Gunyenji wouldn't admit the second possibility. She frowned. Even if I contact someone, wouldn't you guys know? There are no secrets on the internet. Would I be that stupid? Reinitz thought about it and smiled. Then what do you want to see? I have a phone and can go online. I can read it to you. Gunyenji was speechless. She rolled her eyes and sat down next to Reinitz. She said attentively, Reinitz, have you tried this white sausage? It's very delicious. It's the taste of Mother Hannah's house. As she spoke, she forked a piece of white sausage and fed it to Reinitz's mouth. Reinitz had never received such good treatment from Gunyenji. He knew she had other intentions, but he couldn't help opening his mouth and finishing the white sausage she fed him. Gunyenji was very happy and fed him a few more mouthfuls of food. She even fed him mouthful by mouthful of bread. There was only bread and sausage, but Reinitz was drunk on it. His blue eyes stared at Gunyenji's face and couldn't move away. Gunyenji looked away uncomfortably and tugged at the corner of his shirt. Hey Reinitz, can you lend me your phone? I'm only looking at the news online, especially the case I'm in charge of. I told you before, I'm a lawyer. I'm helping someone with a lawsuit, so I can't give up halfway. I swore to bring that B*TCH to justice. Reinitz took out his phone and swiped it open. What lawsuit are you fighting? Can I find it online? After a moment of silence, he asked her again, Is your real name Gunyenji? He pronounced the 3 words Gunyenji in Mandarin. His pronunciation was perfect, as if he had practiced it many times. There was no accent at all. Gunyenji blinked. All right. Didn't you already know? Didn't ALS tell you? I want to hear it from you. Reinitz looked at her deeply. I don't believe what he said, but as long as you say it, I'll believe it. Gunyenji blushed with shame and looked away helplessly. She said, Yes, but my English name is indeed Sirius. Reinitz raised his eyebrows in surprise. This was indeed something they didn't know. He thought she had made up the name Sirius to coax him, but it turned out to be true. All right, don't be like that. I don't believe Alice didn't tell you about the case I'm in charge of. Gunyenji propped her head on her hand and leaned against the dining table as she studied Reinitz. I really want to finish this. It's the case related to Seth. He's also the person who's after my life this time. Reinitz looked at her and thought she really wasn't lying to him. This little girl was too smart. He searched for Li Haiqing's case on his phone and picked out some news to read to her. Because Seth escaped, the court hasn't announced the results of the first trial yet. He then said, This case has a team of plaintiffs' lawyers and you're only one of them. You're not there right now, so your colleagues will finish the case. I'm also suing Seth's family for civil compensation, Gunyenji said gloomily. If I don't go, I'm afraid that family will escape civil punishment. Reinitz continued to watch the news and laughed. Compensation of 1 billion euros? Yes, that's bold and impressive. Gunyenji returned to her seat. She could tell that Reinitz had no intention of showing his phone to her, so it didn't matter how much she tried to please him. Picking up her knife and fork for her lunch, Gunyenji changed her angle to attack Reinitz. As she ate, she analyzed the relationship between Reinitz and ALS. Reinitz, why do you listen to ALS so much? What right does he have to order you around? You're not a government official or a soldier. What he did is against the law. I'm a foreigner. If my country doesn't stand up for me no matter what he does to me, I won't be able to sue anyone. But you're different. You're a German citizen. If he dares to mess with you, you can sue him until he's sent to military court and sent to military prison. Reinitz stopped looking at his phone and looked up at her steadily. The expression in his eyes seemed to be encouraging her. Go on, keep talking. Gunyenji winked at him. You know I'm a lawyer and a very successful one at that. If you want to sue him, I can defend you for free. I guarantee that you'll be able to sue him until he loses his pants. Reinitz couldn't help but laugh as he shook his head. He leaned forward and whispered, Sirius, I like the way you lie to everyone. It's very charming. Gunyenji was speechless. Damn. She was being looked down upon. Gunyenji rolled her eyes. She knew she couldn't incite Reinitz to turn against ALS. Sirius, do you know which organization Al's Federal Intelligence Agency's Bureau 1 used to be? Reinitz felt the need to explain it to Gunyenji. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know how she died in the future for trying to poach ALS. Which one? Gunyenji ate her oatmeal and put in some condensed milk. It was sickeningly sweet. The Gestapo. Gunyenji's hand trembled. She looked at Reinitz in disbelief. Really? The Gestapo was a German transliteration of the Mandarin term. It translated to National Secret Police. It was a notorious secret service organization during the Nazi Germany era. It was also the most biting dog under the SS. That organization still exists? Of course the Gestapo doesn't exist anymore. Reinitz shrugged. But its organization and personnel were completely inherited by the Federal Intelligence Agency. So don't be too careless. Gunyenji was silent. She knew that Reinitz had a deeper meaning behind his words. He must be well aware of what she meant just now. That was why he was subtly reminding her not to try to drive a wedge between him and ALS. ALS was much more powerful than she imagined. ALS allowed you to live with me on account of our many years of friendship. But don't think that he has completely let go. Reinitz was almost scaring her because he was worried that this unusually courageous little girl would do many unimaginable things. If she angered them, it would be terrible if they took harsh measures against her. Gunyenji's face paled. She couldn't help but look around. So, ALS also had eyes and ears here? Who was it? The bodyguards outside the door? The kitchen maids who came to cook? The cleaners? Or the gardeners who trimmed the flowers outside? As soon as Reinitz said that, Gunyenji immediately dismissed the idea of getting the service staff to help her pass messages. The only person she could trust here was herself. She didn't even dare to guarantee Reinitz's safety. He obviously had a better relationship with ALS. But if she sat here all day and did nothing, she might as well die. She lowered her head gloomily. Her nose felt sour, and 2 drops of tears slid down her face and landed on the dining table. Gunyenji quickly wiped them with a tissue. Reinitz was slightly taken aback, but he finally gave in. I'll ask ALS tomorrow. If he agrees, I'll install internet at home. Gunyenji almost fainted when she heard that. So his house really didn't have internet. Who didn't have internet at home in this day and age? Gunyenji hugged her knees as she sat on the windowsill in the living room. The 2 sparkling diamond earrings on her perfectly shaped earlobes shone in the sunlight. It was like 2 miniature suns were glued to her earlobes. She looked at the neatly trimmed garden beds in the yard and kept thinking of opportunities in her mind. Reinitz brought a cup of coffee and sat not far from her reading the newspaper. Gunyenji's eyes swept over and looked him up and down. She tried to find something to talk about. Reinitz, how did you and ALS meet? Did you tell him I was here? From his tone, the 2 of them seemed to be friends and very close friends. How could someone who was good friends with the director of the German Federal Intelligence Service be a normal person? You must be kidding me. Gunyenji felt disdain in her heart, but she didn't dare say it out loud. Reinitz didn't look up and didn't avoid her question. If I said it was a coincidence, would you believe me? Their department was looking for you and they found you. That's how they knew I was with you. ALS was also an orphan and we grew up in the same orphanage. Weren't you adopted by Mother Hannah later on? Yes, but I was only adopted by her when I was 12, and ALS was adopted when he was 10. We were all grown up at that time and we were best friends. Later we met in university and became classmates. Reinitz explained in detail. Gunyenji could imagine 2 boys who were familiar with each other in the orphanage reuniting in university after a few years. As long as they were normal people, their relationship would definitely be better than before. Later on, he joined the army and made a lot of contributions. His rank and position kept rising. After I graduated from university, I became a software engineer and started a few small companies. After I sold them, I made some money. Reinitz finished speaking and looked up from the newspaper. His blue eyes danced with laughter. Curious girl, what else do you want to ask? Gunyenji was speechless. She turned her head and continued to look out the window. Then hurry up and install an internet connection. I'm so bored I'm going to grow mushrooms. Reinitz looked at her thoughtfully. She had been very obedient these past few days and didn't do anything out of line. However, she sat on the windowsill every day and looked out the window. It wasn't that he didn't understand how she felt. Who could be happy when their freedom was restricted? But Reinitz shook his head and thought that maybe he should use another method. She was a flower that only bloomed under the sunlight in the wild, not a potted plant in a greenhouse. After that, Reinitz often went out and said that he was preparing for a new company and starting a new business. Gunyenji didn't really believe him, but she had no choice but to believe him. Moreover, did it matter whether she believed him or not? Alice sometimes came to visit Reinitz, but when he came, Gunyenji never came out of her room. She didn't want to see him or talk to him. In her eyes, he was like a prison warden who came to visit regularly. The internet connection was installed, but Gu Nianji went online and realized that it was under strict surveillance. She didn't even dare to contact Yin Shixiang and the others because she would expose them if she did. At that time, she realized that even with the internet, she only dared to read some general information. At most, she would pay attention to the progress of Li Haiqing's case. There was still no news of Seth, who had escaped. What did you say? That woman disappeared. She even castrated Seth? The round-faced, straight-haired woman couldn't suppress her anger. Are you pigs? Useless. Useless. Don't tell me that we gave you so many resources and even the Copernicus satellite tracking system, but you still lost her. Boss, it's not that we're useless. That woman had help in the Alps. A man very powerful took her away on a motorcycle. A few of us couldn't catch up to them even on motorcycles. We even fell off a cliff and lost a few people. Help? How could she have help in the Alps? The woman was so angry that she laughed. She knew very well that Gu Nianji's biggest helper, Wuxia, was still trapped in the United States by her scheme. Don't find such a ridiculous excuse just to shirk responsibility. This was the 20th chapter with 5,000 words. There were a total of 20 chapters today, and 100,000 words. Asking for monthly votes. They had worked so hard for 2 months to save up so many chapters, and now they were all being thrown out. Don't forget your monthly votes. Chapter 660. So you must request for monthly votes. Important things must be repeated thrice. Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. Please vote for monthly votes X2. If you have already filled up your 5 monthly votes, remember to vote for recommendation every day. Vote for full votes. Mwah everyone. Good night. Chapter 661. There really was a helper. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Everyone saw it. There's even a video. The man yelled and wanted to send the woman a video. Video? Fine, send it over. The woman suppressed her anger and began to receive the video. The video was very blurry, and it was obviously taken from a moving target in the dark. However, she could still clearly see 2 people on a motorcycle. A man and a woman sat in the back wearing helmets. The slender figure in the back was most likely Gu Nianji. The man on the motorcycle in front of her didn't turn around, but she could see that he had a broad back and long legs. He wasn't anyone she knew. There really was someone helping her? The woman's pupils constricted, and her heart was filled with shock and uncertainty. The man on the motorcycle couldn't be a helper left behind by that person, could he? The woman with the round face and straight hair rubbed her head and thought for a while before shaking her head. Probably not. With that person's meticulousness and ruthlessness, if he had left someone behind, he would have caught all of them in one fell swoop. There was no way he would have met Gu Nianji in that godforsaken place. The woman hung up and sat in her chair to think. York probably wouldn't be able to help much in Germany. Wuxia had already been tied up in the United States, so he still didn't know what had happened to Gu Nianji. After thinking about it, the only person she could still use was the Wuxia Empire. That was almost her final trump card. If she still couldn't kill Gu Nianji, then she could only say that this person was extremely cunning and stubborn. Good people don't live long, but bad people live for thousands of years. Ever since He Jichu returned, he had been searching non-stop for 4 to 5 days, but there was still no news of Gu Nianji. It seemed like all the clues were cut off as soon as they entered the Alps. He decided to stop looking for Gu Nianji and went straight to Seth and York. From the bloodstains he found in the car, Seth seemed to have suffered a great loss and needed to find a place to recuperate. He Jichu was in the Hilton hotel room looking at the information he had gathered over the past few days. Picking up his phone, he ordered his people, "Remember that small clinic? Find the name and address of everyone in the clinic. If we find him, we should be able to find out where Seth is." Seth was a fugitive and seriously injured, so he definitely wouldn't go to a proper hospital for treatment. These small clinics were the most likely places for him to appear. Also, the fact that the other party had abandoned the car in the clinic's parking lot meant that the owner of the clinic had a close relationship with the people who were after Gu Nianji. With this clue, it would be easy to find someone. These people thought that they wouldn't be discovered if they moved. Therefore, when a few masked men with semi-automatic submachine guns dragged the doctor out of his hiding place, he still didn't know what was going on. He thought that it was a normal robbery or extortion, or that someone who had committed a crime was looking for him for treatment. He hurriedly said, "Sirs, do you want money or medicine? My clinic isn't here, but it has everything." The men didn't say anything. They sealed his mouth with tape and brought him to Hijichu's place. Hijichu didn't appear personally. Instead, he sat behind a screen and listened to his people interrogate the doctor. The doctor had never been tortured like this before. His wrist was broken and his scalpel-holding hand was crippled. He bawled and confessed everything. Seth is useless now. I performed a cavernous and testicular resection on his lower body. He's currently recuperating in a villa. I don't know. I don't know anything. The female lawyer they were after ran away. They're still looking for her. I don't know where that female lawyer is. The doctor hugged his broken hand and cried bitterly. It had nothing to do with me. I was only treating their injuries. I've never done anything bad. People who help the wicked say they've never done anything bad. Ah, me too. I only do charity. The mercenary who broke his wrist made a rare joke. He was truly disgusted by such a hypocritical person. You say you've never done anything bad, but all these years, you treated these people no matter what injuries they suffered. How much did they give you in private? As a doctor, you covered up gunshot wounds and knife wounds. You say you've never done anything bad? How many murderers and robbers have you covered up? Don't you know that there are accomplices in the law? The doctor was rendered speechless and sobbed a little less loudly. Hijichu finally sighed deeply when he heard this. He slowly stood up with the help of the chair. Knowing that Nyenji hadn't fallen into the hands of those Beasterisk cheese, he was finally half relieved. She had always been a smart girl. This time he hoped she could hold on. He would definitely find her and bring her home personally. Hijichu came out of the room where the doctor was locked up and ordered his men, "Go catch Seth." According to the doctor's confession, the villa Seth was hiding in was actually a private property owned by the Yorks. The property was so secluded that basically no one knew it belonged to them. There were no other homes within a 5-mile radius except for them. Seth lay on the bed in the villa feeling like he was dying. He couldn't sleep at all. Staying here alone every day to recuperate was like waiting for death. No one else came here. Other than his mother, Ramona, and stepfather, York, who brought him food and a change of clothes every 3 days, no one else came here. He didn't want to see anyone either. Now that he was in this state, he was neither human nor ghost. It was better to be dead. Whenever he thought of that vicious female lawyer, he gritted his teeth and wanted nothing more than to cut her into 1,000 pieces. He swore that when he recovered, he would make that female lawyer's death be worse than that female exchange student's. Seth fell asleep in his rage, but was woken up by a sharp pain. Opening his eyes, he realized he wasn't in his bed but in the basement of his house. A group of burly masked men dressed in black surrounded him in a circle, and there were 4 or 5 black wolf dogs at his feet barking at him. A man wearing a black cloak and a low-brimmed hat slowly walked over and stepped on Seth's face. His voice was cool and indifferent. "Are you Seth?" It was a standard Hanoverian accent. Seth thought it sounded familiar, but he couldn't see the man's face clearly. "Is that so?" the man asked again. Yes, Seth stuttered. He raised his head and tried to see the man's face clearly, but he couldn't. The man's face was hidden in the shadow of the dark hat, and he seemed to be wearing sunglasses. Sweat trickled down his face and he suddenly felt fear. The man didn't say anything threatening and just stood straight in front of him, but it made him feel endless fear. Looking up at the man's black cloak, Seth felt the darkness grow larger and larger until it was boundless and enveloped his entire body. It was as if a catastrophe was about to befall him. The man in the black cloak was Hijichu. He looked down at Seth, who was crawling at his feet, and retracted his feet as if he thought Seth was dirty. Rubbing his feet on the carpet, he turned around and said, "Kill him." Seth's pupils dilated as he watched the man's black cloak sweep across the threshold like the Grim Reaper had arrived. Rip. Seth's clothes were ripped off by several bodyguards, and then the wolf dogs glared at him hungrily. One by one they pounced on him. Hijichu stood at the basement door and listened to the wolf dogs' excited howls as well as Seth's screams, each louder than the last. The bodyguards watched impassively until Seth was on the brink of death from the wolf dogs before stabbing him in the chest. The person who did it wore a thin, transparent glove that had clear fingerprints on it. However, the fingerprints were only faint marks on the handle of the knife. "Is this the knife York used?" a bodyguard asked quietly. "Yes, the fingerprints are all there. I found a thief and paid a lot of money to get it." One of the bodyguards adjusted the knife with a grin. After everything was cleaned up, Seth's body was decomposed to bring forward the time of death. Finally, Seth's decomposed body was placed in the freezer to be frozen. "Mr. He, it's all done," the captain of the bodyguards reported to Hijichu. "Okay. Clean up this place and don't leave any clues." Hijichu glanced back before turning to leave. They had come prepared with thick plastic bags on their feet and thick plastic gloves on their hands, so they wouldn't leave any footprints or fingerprints. After leaving York's villa, the two cars sped into the mountains under the cover of night and made a large detour before returning to the Hilton Hotel in Munich. It was already midnight, and Hijichu was wide awake when he returned to his room. Turning on his laptop, he searched the internet and found the target's computer. He hacked into it and obtained a series of evidence and information. Then he used the target's email to send it to many people and organizations, including Germany's most famous social media and the 3 major TV stations. The email sent by Hijichu through the target was too shocking. That day, almost all the media in Germany, including the internet, TV stations, newspapers and magazines, had the same explosive news. This was the mistake of Andrea, a very famous member of Germany's parliament and a popular candidate for the next chancellor. He had sent a private email to everyone. This private email wasn't just any private email. It was a discussion between him and his trusted subordinates on how to buy votes and bribe elections. Also, he had once made a deal with a gang to assassinate a member of parliament who had competed with him for a seat in parliament. The evidence was too heavy and most importantly, it was all sent from this person's own email. The German National Security Agency quickly followed up and applied for a subpoena to the parliament member's home to search for evidence. The parliament member's computer, phone, tablet, and all smart electronics were confiscated and searched by professionals. This time the evidence was too abundant, and there was no one to cover up for him. Everyone related to him couldn't wait to draw a clear line with him, afraid of being implicated by him. And among the evidence, York, who could cover up everything in the Roslau area, appeared many times. Whether it was helping the parliament member bribe elections or helping him connect with the gang to assassinate another competitor, he was never absent. When this incident was exposed, York was immediately silenced in Roslau. The mayor there immediately transferred him from his position as police chief and made him the principal of the police academy to avoid this storm. Smith and the others found out and laughed in anger. He can still be the principal of the police academy after something like this happened. That's a position no worse than being the police chief. Exactly. These Germans won't shed a tear until they see the coffin. Hijichu stared coldly out the window and thought it was time to release the second wave. Less than 2 days later, the official social media account of the Munich District Court suddenly posted several screenshots of emails. The content was the second judge in charge of Li Haiqing's case and York's insider trading. York asked the judge to acquit his stepson in exchange for agreeing to help the judge run for the next parliament. As soon as the screenshots were posted, they were immediately reposted nationwide. The judge kept delaying the first trial verdict for Li Haiqing's case, and everyone previously thought it was because there was insufficient evidence. As soon as the email screenshots were posted, everyone knew there was insufficient evidence. He was colluding with York in an attempt to get away with it. By the time the Munich District Court found out about the incident on their official social media account, the entire screenshot had already spread like wildfire throughout Germany. Even the Parliament and the Ministry of Justice began subpoenaing and hearing the judge. Although the judge vehemently denied it and said the email screenshots were photoshopped, the German Ministry of Justice's technical department recovered the deleted emails on his phone and proved the screenshots were not fake. As for why they were stupid enough to leave evidence in black and white, it was because the two of them couldn't trust each other and were afraid the other would go back on their word. Therefore they had to use some form of record to keep each other in check. If you dare expose me or abandon your deal with me, I'll expose you. This kind of mutually destructive method was the only way to ensure their interests were aligned. They just didn't expect there to be such a powerful hacker in the world who could sneak into their emails and screenshots of all the emails. Soon after, the second judge in charge of Li Haiqing's case was suspended for investigation and transferred away from the case. Both cases were related to York. And after it was revealed that he had bribed the first parliament member and colluded with the mafia, he was only removed from his position as the police chief and became the principal of the police academy. This kind of shady person from the inside out became the principal of the police academy. Are you kidding me? All of Germany's social media was talking about this topic. York was in the limelight and even the most popular internet celebrity wasn't as popular as him. Under everyone's condemnation and some people adding fuel to the fire, York was removed from his position as the principal of the police academy. At the same time, his German bank account, Swiss bank account, and deposit balance were exposed. Faced with the astronomical number of zeros in his bank account balance, the amount of money that York couldn't earn even if he worked as the police chief for 500 years. The Germans were really angry. For many Germans, corruption and bribery of officials was what they hated the most. Although they sympathized with the case of the foreign female student, they never felt the same way. Therefore, even if York was dealt with lightly, these people didn't really care. At most, they would just watch the show and make a fuss. But it was different now. York had touched the bottom of the Germans' lives. For a moment, social media and traditional media were unanimously condemning York and calling for him to be severely punished. Once these bank accounts were exposed, York was immediately suspended for investigation. All of York's officials in the Roslau region were implicated and forced to step down. The Roslau region held an early election. The prosecutor and police moved box after box of information from his and Ramona's residence, and all of his properties were searched. Hijichu used the reason that they had a civil claim against York's family and immediately requested that all of York's and Ramona's assets be frozen, including his Swiss bank account. Many people knew that the Swiss bank never got involved in such matters and rarely voluntarily handed over or froze their own depositor's bank account. But as soon as Hijichu requested it, the Swiss bank agreed immediately. When the German officials saw that even the Swiss bank had to bow down to Hijichu, their hearts began to pound. They no longer dared to go against him. Just as everyone was investigating York's assets in full swing, the most important part of the show began. The police found Seth's frozen body in one of York's country houses. Everyone knew that Seth had absconded, but they didn't expect that he hadn't escaped Germany at all and had died a long time ago. As soon as this matter was exposed, York was no longer a normal political matter but a criminal case. There were only York, Seth and Ramona's fingerprints and footprints in that house, and Seth's autopsy proved that he had died 20 days ago, the day he supposedly escaped from the hospital. He had also died a horrible death. Not only was there the blood of a wolf dog in his body, but his stepfather's fingerprints were also found on the knife wounds. This result was accidentally revealed by someone. Ramona, who had always claimed to be ill and kept quiet, immediately changed her mind when she found out. When she saw her son's body, she cried so hard she almost fainted. Many people believed that York killed Seth because his stepson was too good at causing trouble for him. Killing him was in line with York's style of doing things. Even Ramona believed it because when York quarreled with her, he had said more than once that her son would be better off dead. Not to mention all the direct and indirect evidence found on York's body. York had killed her beloved son, Seth, and she would no longer remain silent for him. Once Ramona changed her mind, York's case was almost certain. She had been married to York for more than 10 years. She knew everything about York. With so much evidence, York's power was already gone. No one would protect him anymore, so there were only people who would kick him when he was down. York was very irritable in the detention center because he had created so many miscarriages of justice. Now that the tables had turned, it was his turn. This is the first chapter with 5,000 words and there are more to come. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you for your monthly votes yesterday. Today's third chapter has 15,000 words. If you can vote more, I will continue with the third chapter tomorrow. Chapter 662. The direct and indirect evidence that left York unable to defend himself looked so familiar. Hadn't he framed others like this back then? He refused to accept it. All of this was fake. All of it was fake. He didn't know how it all happened. Did it start from when Seth tortured and killed Li Haichin, or when they planned Seth's escape and kidnapping the female lawyer? After thinking it over, he believed it had something to do with Seth's kidnapping of the female lawyer. He remembered how much manpower, money and resources the mastermind had expended in order to successfully kidnap the female lawyer. If that person hadn't interfered out of nowhere and they hadn't attacked the female lawyer, Seth would have escaped to North Africa by now, and none of this would have happened. Therefore, if he wanted to escape, he could only find that woman. York slowly thought about it as he sat in the detention center's cafeteria. He finished all the food on the plate in front of him. Although nothing he ate tasted good, now wasn't the time to go on a diet. He needed to survive in order to redress his grievances. Just as he was about to leave the cafeteria, a guard came over and said, "York, someone wants to see you." York froze. Someone still wanted to see him at a time like this? Even Ramona didn't want to talk to him, so someone still wanted to see him? York followed the guard to the reception room. To his surprise, the person didn't take him to the standard reception room specially prepared for suspects in the detention center. In the standard reception room, the visitor and visitor were separated by a thick layer of bulletproof soundproof glass. They could only look at each other and talk on the phone. This person brought him to a meeting room that looked like a normal meeting room. There was no bulletproof soundproof glass between the visitor and visitor. As soon as he walked in, he saw a tall man in a dark suit standing in front of the conference room window with his hands behind his back. The dark suit was perfectly pressed on the man's body, and it was obvious that it was handmade, high-end fashion and not bought. York coughed twice as a greeting. The man turned around and looked at York expressionlessly, a murderous glint flashing in his shimmering, sultry eyes. York froze. The person who came to see him was actually Hijichu. He was no stranger to this person. He was the lawyer for the plaintiff's team in Li Haiqing's case. Although he had never argued in court, York believed that the youngest partner of the largest law firm in the United States had single-handedly organized all the arguments for the plaintiff's team. This person was definitely standing opposite him. Why would he come to visit him? York sneered. He was no longer as calm as before. Mr. He? I'm so surprised that Mr. He actually came to see me. York sat down in the conference room without any trace of awkwardness. Hijichu also sat down across from him. He rested one hand on the conference table between them and put the other in his trouser pocket. He sat leisurely, his attitude cold and aloof as always. York, I've already applied to freeze your Swiss bank account. Hijichu leaned forward and said casually. York's expression immediately changed. Impossible. This is impossible. He roared loudly and glared at Hijichu. He wanted nothing more than to tear him to pieces. Hijichu smiled and leaned back in his chair. He raised his hand. If you don't believe me, can't you just call your bank representative? As he spoke, he took out his phone and slid it in front of York. Without another word, York picked up his phone and opened the call. Just as he was about to make the call, he suddenly realized something and put the phone down. He pushed it back and sneered, You're trying to trick me? If he used Hijichu's phone to make a call, then Hijichu would have all the information on the caller. Hijichu sneered and shook his head. He caught the phone. Why would I need to trick you? I even know your Swiss bank account password. Why would I need to trick you? York's eyes narrowed in fear. His face twitched as he slowly sat down and glared at Hijichu. After a while he asked, What do you mean? Since you already know everything, why are you still looking for me? Hijichu played with his phone and looked at York lazily. I'm bored. Can't I? York was speechless. He didn't want to talk anymore. He stood up. If you don't have anything else, then I'm leaving. York turned to leave. Stop right there, Hijichu said dryly behind him and stood up as well. York stopped and didn't turn around. What's wrong? Does Mr. He still have something to say? Of course Hijichu had something to ask him. Otherwise, why would he talk to someone he hated? However, for the sake of Gunyenji's whereabouts and to know who was behind all this, Hijichu had no choice but to feign civility with this person he hated. Yes, you know your current situation, right? The civil compensation case, the corruption and bribery case, and the stepson's murder case, all three major cases are on you. A life sentence is a light sentence and you can never be released from prison early. Also, how many enemies do you have in prison waiting to take revenge on you? Do I need to remind you? When Hijichu finished speaking, York's back froze. He had forgotten how many enemies he had in prison. Cold sweat dripped down York's back. He didn't feel so confident anymore. But what exactly did Hijichu want to do? York turned around and stared at Hijichu, but he couldn't see any clues from his cold face. Mr. He, what do you mean? York unknowingly used honorifics against Hijichu. Hijichu took 2 steps to the side and walked to a place not far from York with his hands behind his back. What I mean is very clear. Who cooperated with you to let your stepson Seth kidnap Lawyer Gu? Tell me and I can help you get out of this. York glared at Hijichu. After a while he suddenly laughed. So that's how it is. But Mr. He, my memory isn't very good. I have to think about it carefully before I can remember who cooperated with me. He wasn't willing to tell Hijichu right away. Hijichu was burning with anxiety, but he couldn't let York see that he was anxious. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to continue this discussion. He nodded faintly and said, Very well then. Let me know when you remember. I'll also tell you that I don't like people bargaining with me. If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. I've already stated my conditions. If you don't accept them or think of better conditions, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to keep you company. Goodbye. Hijichu left without hesitation. York, on the other hand, was stunned. He instinctively called out to Hijichu, Mr. He, let's talk. Hijichu didn't stop walking. Without turning his head, he said, If you've thought it through, then talk. If you haven't thought it through, don't force it. York was speechless and hesitated. He didn't know if he should make this exchange with Hijichu. Also, he hadn't contacted that woman yet, so he had to sound her out first. If that woman didn't help him, it wouldn't be too late for him to betray her. After all, that woman was too powerful. Not only did she have money, she directly gave him 100 million euros in cash and deposited it into a Swiss bank account, but she also had power. She could mobilize the Copernicus satellite tracking system. With this kind of power, if York wanted to betray her, he would have to think carefully. Otherwise he would really lose himself. After Hijichu left, York returned to his room in the detention center and didn't do anything for the whole day. But the next day, when it was time for him to go to Seattle, he sent a letter to a strange email address and said, "Miss Yamaguchi, let's talk. What do you think about this?" This letter was intercepted by Hijichu, who had been monitoring him, but the strange thing was that the email address that had received York's mail couldn't be found at all. No matter what method he used to track it, he couldn't find the address. It was like a stone sinking into the ocean. Hijichu's heart sank when he saw this result. Even with his computer network skills, he couldn't track this email address. Could there be a computer expert more powerful than him in this world? Looking at the name of the person York had sent the email to, it seemed to be a Japanese woman. Did the Japanese have such advanced computer network skills? Hijichu didn't believe it. He sat in front of the computer thinking for most of the night and finally thought of a possibility. He couldn't help but look even more grim. He remembered his faint worries from before, and now the appearance of this strange email address seemed to confirm his suspicions. No wonder he couldn't track it. Oh no! Hijichu stood up from his desk abruptly. If the other party really was evenly matched with him, then if he hadn't guessed wrong, York was now in grave danger. He picked up his phone and immediately called the detention center where York was being held. "I have something urgent to talk to York about. Please let him answer the phone." The guard on duty was very unhappy to be disturbed from his sleep and said, "Who are you? So late. If you have anything to say, talk tomorrow." "My surname is He. Look at York's visitor records. I went to see him the day before yesterday." Hijichu suppressed his nervousness and said in a low voice. The guard on duty at the detention center flipped through the visitor records impatiently. When he saw the note next to Hijichu's name, he immediately turned 180 degrees and said quickly, "Mr. He. It's Mr. He. Please wait a moment. I'll get York to answer the phone right now." The guard on duty immediately woke up and jogged to the room where York was being held. He took the key and opened the large metal door. He shouted loudly, "York, come out and answer the phone." It was already 2 or 3 in the morning. York must have fallen asleep because there was no sound at all. The guard on duty had no choice but to turn on the lights while swearing. He walked in and yanked the blanket off York's bed. He ended up seeing York bleeding from all 7 orifices on the bed. He was so scared that he fell back on his butt. He then scrambled out and screamed, "Murder! Murder! Someone killed someone in the detention center." When Hijichu received the news that York had died in the detention center, he immediately understood that he was still one step too late. The other party had probably acted as soon as they received York's blackmail email. Although he didn't find out who was behind this, the fact that the other party had cut off this lead so quickly meant that the mastermind didn't want Hijichu to know. Why didn't they want him to know? Haha, it was probably possible that this person was someone Hijichu knew, or someone who was on opposing sides of Hijichu. Hijichu didn't have many friends, but he had many enemies. He narrowed his shimmering almond-shaped eyes and quickly thought about how to find Gunyenji. Seth and York's lead had been cut off, and Gunyenji's phone must have been lost as well, so he couldn't use GPS to track her. Where exactly was she? Was she in the Alps? From the looks of it, the worst-case scenario was that she was trapped in the Alps. However, it wasn't winter, so it was a little better. If it was winter and the mountains were sealed off by heavy snow, then there would be no way out. Hijichu thought about it for a long time and made 2 decisions. 1. He immediately sent people into the Alps to search. He had to find Gunyenji even if he had to search every inch of the Alps and Bavaria. 2. He had to do something. He had to appear more in front of the media and the public. He had to stand in a high and conspicuous place so that no matter where Gunyenji was, she would know he was back and waiting for her. After that, Hijichu acted out of character and no longer kept a low profile or avoided the media. He frequently appeared on major German television stations to accept interviews and do programs. He also opened his official account on German social media. The profile picture was Gunyenji's back, and his comment was "waiting for you to come home." At first, Smith and the others didn't understand why Hijichu suddenly liked all kinds of exposure and appeared under the media's searchlights. Later, when they saw Hijichu's social media account, they finally understood. So he wanted to stand at the highest point so that the lost person would know where to find him. He Jichu was already extremely attractive. His looks were perfect for everything, and his sparkling, amorous, almond-shaped eyes paired with his cool and indifferent expression made for a very charming and contradictory temperament. Coupled with his fluent Hanoverian German and his regal demeanor, it was the icing on the cake. The German public was infatuated, and groups of fangirls and fangirls flooded social media every day. Gu Nianji should have seen such a large-scale exposure, but unfortunately her network blocked all news about Hijichu, so she couldn't see the whirlwind Hijichu created on the German internet. She didn't like watching TV, and Reinitz didn't have one at home, so she couldn't see Hijichu's glory on TV. That night, when Gu Nianji was already asleep, Alice quietly came to visit Reinitz. The two of them drank draft beer under the moonlight and thought about Hijichu's recent unusual behavior. Reinitz, do you think that he is still looking for her? Alice pouted in the direction of Gu Nianji's bedroom upstairs. Reinitz took a sip of draft beer and didn't say anything. Under the silvery moonlight, his expression was indifferent, as if he had nothing left to live for. His dark blue eyes were devoid of emotion. After a while, Reinitz finished his draft beer and said dryly, "Can he not look for her? If he had lost her, he would find her even if he had to go to heaven or hell. That's true. She is his capable subordinate. She brought him from the Wuxia Empire to Germany, but there was no one there when she returned. Who would let her go?" ALS gave Reinitz a thumbs up. "But you had the foresight to block all information about Hijichu in advance. Otherwise, if she found out that Hijichu had already returned, who knows how much trouble she would cause." ALS had only recently learned of Hijichu's other identity in the United States. Even the Supreme Commander of NATO, Secretary General Philip, had to curry favor with him. Fortunately, the Federal Intelligence Division was a different organization. They didn't have to follow those spineless government officials to lick Hijichu's boots. Gu Nianji was in their hands and they wouldn't let her go. But they didn't want to cause trouble. If they were not careful and allowed Gu Nianji to contact Hijichu, then Hijichu would directly ask for her from the Intelligence Division. At that time they really didn't dare to say whether they would let her go or not. "It's just a small program. It's not difficult at all," Reinitz said coldly. "But Sirius isn't used to being locked up in a room. If she goes out and gets information about he from someone else, you have to think about how to deal with it." Ellis poured himself another draft beer and said nonchalantly, "How can I deal with it? Don't I still have to listen to the higher-ups? If they can't handle his pressure, what do you think I should do?" Reinitz smiled and didn't say anything else. He lit a cigarette and took a drag. As the smoke lingered, his vision became a bit hazy. That day the Wuxia Imperial Ministry of Internal Affairs Overseas Citizens Office finally saw a report of a citizen going missing abroad. The citizen's name was Gu Nianji. She was one of the lawyers for the plaintiff in the case of Li Haiqing, a female German exchange student who had caused a stir a while ago. Minister Bai from the Ministry of Internal Affairs had taken special care of this case, and even the legal team was hired by Minister Bai's family. Now that they saw that the only Wuxia imperial citizen in the legal team had gone missing, the people from the Overseas Citizens Office were shocked. They quickly picked out the report from the Wuxia Imperial Consulate in Munich and reported it to the higher-ups. It was already late at night when the report was reported to Minister Bai Jianqing of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. His daughter, Bai Yueran, was helping him organize official documents in his office. When Bai Yueran saw the report, she stood up immediately and hurriedly pushed open the door to Bai Jianqing's small office. "Father, Gu Nianji has gone missing in Germany. I have to tell General Ji this news as soon as possible." She should have notified Hua Xiaoheng immediately, but he was still overseas on a mission and had no news. Bai Yueran knew that she couldn't use any means to disturb Hua Xiaoheng. This was an iron rule. If she didn't obey, she would only be court-martialed and await the strictest trial. Therefore, the fastest way was to notify General Ji. General Ji had more authority than Hua Xiaoheng and a higher military rank. He could also mobilize more resources to find Gu Nianji. Bai Jianqing looked up from the thick stack of documents and removed his reading glasses. He frowned. "What did you say? Who went missing?" "Gu Nianji." Bai Yueran composed herself. "Do you remember? The little girl Hua Xiao rescued from my aunt's magnetic field experiment 7 years ago. She was Gu Xiangwen's youngest daughter." This is the second installment of 5,000 words. There's more to come. Please give us monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you all for your monthly votes yesterday. Today there are 3 installments of 15,000 words. If you all can vote more, we'll continue with the third installment tomorrow. Chapter 663. Oh, it's her. I remember now. Didn't she study law and go to Germany to help with the case? Bai Jianqing knew a bit about her background. Yes, that's her. But she went missing in Germany. Bai Yueran was a bit uneasy. Although she was only the head of the legal department in the Special Operations Forces, the discipline and way of doing things had greatly affected her. She also knew Gu Nianji's importance. Although her father, Gu Xiangwen, was more important than her now, who knew what the Special Operations Forces thought? She was someone Hua Xiaoheng cared about. Okay, go quickly and talk to General Ji. Tell him not to worry. I'll have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs urge the local police to find her immediately. Bai Jianqing picked up the phone and called the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Bai Yueran nodded. Thank you, father. She turned to leave. Bai Yueran left home and immediately drove her car to the military compound where General Ji lived. She was the head of the legal department in the Special Operations Forces. Her security level was relatively high, and she was appreciated by General Ji. She had a pass that allowed her to enter the compound at any time, so it was fine even if she went in at night. General Ji was still awake. Although he was old, he was still used to staying up late. Late at night was the time when he was most energetic and clear-headed. He was buried in a document when the internal line on his desk rang. There were 3 phones on his desk, one black, one red, and one gray. The one that rang was the gray internal line. General Ji didn't even raise his head as he took the phone. Hello. Bai Yueran's calm and clear voice came through the phone. General Ji, I'm Bai Yueran. I have an important report to make. I'm waiting at your door. Although Bai Yueran could enter the main military compound, she couldn't enter General Ji's house as she pleased. She had to get permission from the guards at the door, and the guards at the door had to get permission from General Ji or his family before they could let her in. General Ji's expression immediately turned serious. Yueran? Come in. The guard at the door could hear the conversation between General Ji and Bai Yueran. He nodded and recorded their conversation before letting Bai Yueran in. When Bai Yueran entered, General Ji had just come down the stairs. As soon as he saw her, he said, Yueran, you're here. Come and sit. Bai Yueran stood in the middle of the living room and waited for General Ji to walk over before presenting the report written by the Deputy Consul of the Wuxia Imperial Consulate in Munich to General Ji with both hands. She said quietly, We just received a report that Gu Nianji has gone missing in Germany. General Ji hadn't expected to hear this news in the middle of the night. The muscles on his face twitched uncontrollably, but he wasn't agitated. He silently sat down on the sofa, took out the reading glasses hanging in his jacket pocket, and began to carefully read the diplomatic briefing. It took General Ji half an hour to read a diplomatic briefing of less than 500 words. Bai Yueran didn't even dare to breathe. She could only stare at the sofa next to General Ji in a daze. After a while, General Ji finally said slowly, It's been more than 20 days since Gu Nianji disappeared until we received the news. How was it? Is there any news from the consulate over there? Bai Yueran was taken aback. She was very impressed by General Ji. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. General Ji's first words were out of the ordinary. Even she forgot to look at the time on the briefing. However, she said, Seriously, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is too inefficient. It took 7 to 8 days for a briefing like this to be sent to my father. We must get them to be more efficient. She didn't know where she had been delayed, but this was a critical period for her father, Bai Jianqing, to run for Prime Minister. She couldn't afford to make any mistakes, so she didn't want to pursue this responsibility for now. General Ji didn't comment. Regardless of whether it was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they were all government departments. Bai Jianqing could manage them, but as the head of the military he couldn't say a word. One shouldn't meddle in politics if one wasn't in a position. The biggest taboo in politics was to stick their hands into things that didn't belong to them. Seeing General Ji remain silent, Bai Yueran could only say, Then what should we do? Should we send someone to Germany? General Ji thought that Gu Nianji was Gu Xiangwen's daughter and Xiaoheng's fiancée. They couldn't just sit back and do nothing if something happened to her. However, Hua Xiaoheng was currently out on a mission, so he couldn't be informed about this or know about it. Although he knew Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't ignore the severity of the situation and ignore the public for personal reasons, who knew? He had only fallen for one girl in all these years. General Ji didn't dare take the risk. After thinking for a while, General Ji said, Go back and ask your father to ask the Ministry of Foreign Affairs again to see if they have any new developments on this matter. I'll accept this for now and see how to proceed. Bai Yueran stood up and quickly said, I'll go back and ask my father right now. General G also stood up and smiled. Thank you, Yuan. You're too kind, General G. I'm also from the Special Operations Forces, so I treat Nianji as one of us. Bai Yuan was very straightforward and turned to leave. After Bai Yuan left, General G returned to his study with the briefing. He read it again and picked up the black phone to call the Special Operations Forces. Switchboard, connect me to Yin Shixiang or Zhao Liangzi. General G thought that since Hu Xiaoheng wasn't in the Wuxia Empire, it was fine to have his two personal secretaries take charge. Hu Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi could be said to have watched Gu Nianji grow up. They had a sense of responsibility and affection for her. If the two of them were in charge, they would definitely be more dedicated than others. General G felt a bit uneasy, but he thought that Gu Nianji was also an adult and the Special Operations Forces had special protection for her, so it should be easy to find her. In the end, the switchboard replied, reporting to Chief, Lieutenant Colonel Yin and Lieutenant Colonel Zhao are both out on a mission and can't answer the phone for now. General G's hand tightened as he secretly felt that something was wrong. Gu Nianji was missing and Hu Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang, and Zhao Liangzi were all on a mission at the same time. He asked in a low voice, what mission did Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi go on? Who sent them? The switchboard knew that this was General G, the highest commander in the military. However, the Special Operations Forces was a bit special, so even General G couldn't ask about certain things. If he wanted to know, Speaker Long had to be present at the same time. The switchboard operator said tactfully, General G, this is the work procedure of the Special Operations Forces. When they come back, they will report to General G. At this point, General G also understood. He had been anxious earlier and hadn't thought about this. Now that he was reminded, he immediately came back to his senses and nodded. Understood. Yin Shixiang, Zhao Liangzi, and the others weren't around, so General G felt that he had to take responsibility for this matter. The next day, General G called for a special meeting of the Supreme Military Council and told the 7 people present about Gu Nianji's disappearance. He then said, this young girl once made a huge contribution to our country. I think it's a bit strange that she suddenly disappeared now. What do you think? Everyone remembered when Gu Nianji first appeared, she was carrying a small backpack with immeasurably valuable engine blueprints that were for fighter jets. It's very strange indeed. A general sitting next to General G frowned. But she's not an orphan anymore. Shouldn't we report this to her family first? Has her father woken up? To these people, the most important person at the moment was no longer Gu Nianji, but her father, Gu Xiangwen. Gu Nianji had only brought them a blueprint, but if Gu Xiangwen woke up, it would be a priceless treasure. He would have countless blueprints, inventions, and all sorts of high-end technology that could help the Wuxia Empire break through technological bottlenecks. But they still unanimously agreed to use the highest standards to rescue Gu Nianji, not for any other reason, but because she was Gu Xiangwen's daughter. They didn't think that Gu Xiangwen would continue working with them if he woke up and discovered that his beloved daughter was missing. Of course, in General G's heart, Gu Nianji had another identity. She was the girl Hu Xiaoheng liked, and he wanted to help Hu Xiaoheng find his fiancée. However, General G didn't explicitly mention this. After all, only he and his personal secretary, Secretary Chao, knew about Hu Xiaoheng's marriage report. General G glanced at the people in the meeting room. Guanchen, you'll be responsible for this. Go to the hospital today to see if Gu Xiangwen has woken up, then think of a way to talk to his sister about this. Hu Guanchen nodded. I'll go after the meeting. This should be done quickly. It looks like it's been dragging on for quite some time. Yeah, so you have to be quick. I'll provide you with everything you need and you'll be in charge. Just let me know if you need anything. I'll be your strong support. General G said solemnly. After everyone left, General G revealed everything to Hu Guanchen. Guanchen, there's one more thing you need to know. What is it? Hu Guanchen looked at General G in confusion. Is it about Gu Nianji? More or less. General G looked around and said in a low voice. Xiaoheng already submitted a marriage report before he left the country. It was approved by the military and also passed Nianji's background check. So she's already your daughter-in-law. This time she's in trouble, so you have to help her as much as you can. Hu Guanchen froze. Xiaoheng wants to marry her? No way. This. How is that possible? General G, you're not joking, are you? How can I joke about something like this? General G was displeased. No one else knows about this, and Xiaoheng doesn't want anyone else to know either, so you have to keep it a secret. Otherwise, I don't know what Xiaoheng will think. Hu Xiaoheng pursed his lips. His heart was in turmoil. His own son had already submitted his marriage report, but he was the last to know. Even General Ji knew before him. Moreover, Gu Nianji had grown up with Xiaoheng. What would people think if he really married her? However, he also knew that Gu Nianji was Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. So for Gu Xiangwen's sake, no one would say anything, nor would they allow others to say anything. If Gu Nianji wasn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter, he would have opposed it no matter what. Huo Guanchen swallowed his anger and promised General Ji, "Don't worry, General Ji. I'll definitely gather the best people to investigate this matter according to the highest standards." General Ji patted his shoulder. "I'm most at ease leaving this matter to you." From General Ji's perspective, whether it was for official or personal reasons, Huo Guanchen was the most suitable person to investigate Gu Nianji's disappearance when Xiaoheng wasn't in the country. After the meeting, Huo Guanchen returned to his office and immediately called his personal secretary in to assign tasks to them. He didn't say what it was, only that it was an important mission. He asked him to gather the relevant personnel from the military's public relations department for a meeting of the highest standards. After the meeting, he also had to communicate with the Special Operations Forces and get them to authorize it. Only the Special Operations Forces could carry out the best rescue. That was because the Special Operations Forces had a natural advantage overseas. His personal secretary took down his orders and went to prepare. After Huo Guanchen arranged the topics for the meeting, he took his private car to the hospital building of the Special Operations Forces headquarters. Gu Xiangwen was closely guarded there. Only Chen Lai and Yi Zitan were personally taking care of him. Yi Zitan was a nurse, which showed how much they valued Gu Xiangwen. Even when General Ji was sick, he wouldn't let Yi Zitan, who was second only to Chen Lai, be a nurse. When Huo Guanchen came to visit Gu Xiangwen, Gu Yanran happened to be there. It was the day she came to visit Gu Xiangwen once a week. He walked in with two personal secretaries. Seeing Gu Yanran there, he nodded at her. "Miss Gu." Gu Yanran recognized him as Huo Guanchen, Huo Xiaoheng's father. He was a general in the military and had a higher rank than Huo Xiaoheng. She walked over and extended her hand with a smile. "What kind of wind blew General Huo here today? It's our honor to have you here." Huo Guanchen didn't want to shake her hand, but her hand was already in front of him. It wouldn't be good if he didn't shake it, so he shook it. "You're too kind, Miss Gu. I'm here to see how your father is doing and when he'll wake up." Gu Yanran smiled. "You'll have to ask Dr. Chen and Dr. Yi about that." As they chatted, Chen Lai and Yi Zitan walked in. "Hello, Chief." They quickly saluted Huo Guanchen. Huo Guanchen raised his hand. "Hello, Dr. Chen, Dr. Yi." He walked to Gu Xiangwen's bed and studied it for a while before turning to ask Chen Lai, who was standing behind him. "Dr. Chen, when will Mr. Gu wake up?" Chen Lai spread his hands. "Chief, your question has stumped me. He's been in a vegetative state for too long, and his bodily functions have atrophied too much. I've only just recovered some of his bodily functions. I really don't know when he'll wake up." Huo Guanchen sighed internally, but maintained a calm expression. "Yes, I understand. You must do your best to save him, no matter the cost." Gu Yanran was touched and uneasy when she heard this. She whispered, "Chief Huo, Dr. Chen and Dr. Yi are doing their best. It's my father's condition that's too bad. It's not their fault." Huo Guanchen had a good impression of Gu Yanran. She was generous to people and was a wealthy person. She had a large amount of assets at such a young age, and most importantly, she was considerate. Look at her attitude toward the medical staff. We should be ashamed that Miss Gu thinks that way. Huo Guanchen nodded slightly and remembered Gu Nianji. "Miss Gu, are you free? I have something to tell you." "I happen to be free today, so I came to see my father." Gu Yanran nodded with a smile. "Please go ahead. Please come with me." Huo Guanchen wouldn't say it in front of Chen Lai and Yi Zitan. He knew that Chen Lai was Huo Xiaoheng's close friend, so he was worried that Chen Lai would ignore the organization's rules and secretly spread the news to Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Guanchen definitely didn't want Gu Nianji's matter to affect Huo Xiaoheng's mission outside. Gu Yanran saw that Huo Guanchen wasn't willing to say it here, so she rolled her eyes and said, "Please." Huo Guanchen led Gu Yanran down the hospital building to the empty field in front of the hospital. Huo Guanchen and Gu Yanran were the only two people standing on the empty field. Huo Guanchen's personal secretary and guards stood at the four corners of the field in the distance. They were very vigilant and looked in all directions to prevent unauthorized people from approaching. In the empty field, Huo Guanchen whispered to Gu Yanran, "Miss Gu, we just received news that your sister, Gu Nianji, went missing in Germany." Gu Yanran's mouth fell open and her eyes were blank. "What did you say? Who went missing?" She looked at Huo Guanchen in confusion and didn't seem to understand. Your sister Gu Yanji. Huo Guanchen slowed down and enunciated each word. He looked at Gu Yanran's confused face with sympathy. Gu Yanran closed her eyes and covered her mouth with her hand. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with tears. She choked out, "Huh? How could she go missing? She's a young girl and she's beautiful. She's unfamiliar with Germany. If she fell into the hands of those perverts, I can't imagine what kind of fate she'll suffer." Huo Guanchen quickly said, "Don't be so pessimistic. Maybe she's just delayed somewhere. For example, her wallet and phone were stolen while she was traveling, so she can't contact her own people for now." He continued, "Also, General G specifically ordered us to treat this matter with the highest standards. If you need resources, give us resources. If you need manpower, give us manpower. All personnel in Europe will be sent to Germany to look for her. Everything will be fine." Gu Yanran wiped her tears and said quietly, "Thank you, General Hua and General Ji. You're right. My sister has been mischievous since she was young. If I find her, I'll definitely lecture her to not cause trouble for others in the future." "How is this trouble?" Huo Guanchen laughed heartily. "She's Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. Just this alone is enough for us to save her at all costs. Let's not talk about anything else. If we don't work hard, your father won't agree when he wakes up." Gu Yanran sighed. "I'm sorry to trouble you and General G. The highest standards. Cai Yanji is so lucky. Although she's not my father's biological daughter, my father has loved her as much as he loves me since she was young. When my father wakes up, he'll be very grateful to you." This was the third installment of 5,000 words, and there were more to come. Thank you for your monthly votes yesterday. There were a total of 15,000 words today. Chapter 664. Gu Nianji wasn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. This news was too shocking. Even someone like Huo Guanchen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. However, his years of military experience hadn't gone to waste. His self-control immediately got the upper hand and he didn't cry out. However, the strange feeling in his heart still showed on his face. Looking up to see Gu Yanran looking at him curiously, Huo Guanchen quickly clenched his fists to cover up his cough. "Miss Gu, you just said that Nianji isn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter? That's impossible, right?" He had never heard Huo Xiaoheng mention it, not even a word. "How is it impossible?" Gu Yanran was shocked, then suddenly realized. "You didn't know? I thought Huo Xiao or Dr. Chen had already told you." She then muttered to herself, "No way? No one really knows about this? I thought everyone knew. This is really... I was too talkative." As she spoke, she gently slapped herself, her face full of apology and guilt. However, Huo Guanchen immediately believed her when he heard that even Huo Xiaoheng knew. He also immediately understood why Huo Xiaoheng had hidden it from everyone. If he hadn't hidden it, his marriage application wouldn't have been approved so easily. Huo Guanchen had always been against it, so he didn't know that Huo Xiaoheng had already quietly approved it. If General Ji hadn't leaked the information today, he really wouldn't have known that Huo Xiaoheng had not only approved the marriage application, but also Gu Nianji's background check. The latter was the most difficult hurdle to overcome. The scheming bastard. Although Huo Guanchen was furious, he still felt a bit proud. This was because the person who had the entire Supreme Military Council running around in circles was his son, his biological son. Therefore, since he knew about this, he had to help him. "Yeah, so is Nianji your father's daughter? I mean, legally speaking." Huo Guanchen quickly calmed down and asked with a warm smile, as if he was unaffected by the news. Yes, of course she is my father's daughter. Legally speaking, of course." Gu Yanran said firmly. She couldn't hide this, nor did she have any intention of being too extreme. "Oh, that's good." Huo Guanchen chuckled. "Although she's not his biological daughter, Mr. Gu loves her like his own. That's enough. It's worth it for us to use the highest standards to rescue her. Goodbye." Huo Guanchen left as soon as he finished speaking. His back was still straight, and Gu Yanran stared in his direction for a long time before turning to leave. Gu Yanran returned home sullenly and saw Yi Xian fiddling with his electronic devices again. She suddenly had the urge to talk to him. She sat over and hugged Yi Xian's arm. She rested her head on his shoulder and said gloomily, "Xian, I'm very sad." "What happened?" Yi Xian didn't even raise his head. His fingers were flying as he quickly typed out various commands on his laptop. No one knew what he was doing. Perhaps he was hacking into someone else's computer, or perhaps he was just purely enjoying the fun of roaming the internet. I don't know if I did something wrong today." Gu Gu Yanran looked down. Why do you think Nianji's luck is so good? What's wrong with her? Yi Xian glanced at her. She's lucky now? Did you know? General Hua and General Ji found out about Nianji's disappearance. Gu Yanran left Yi Xian's shoulder and leaned on the computer desk with one hand. They're going to use the highest standards to rescue her, even if they know she's not my father's biological daughter. Haha, whatever. Yi Xian laughed and spat out 2 words. You think they can rescue her just because they use the highest standards? But why did you tell them that Nianji isn't Uncle Gu's biological daughter? Do they need you to tell them that? Don't they know? I was careless. Gu Yanran was very upset. I really was careless. Also, General Hua said that even if she wasn't, they would still do everything they could to rescue her. He also said that Nianji isn't my father's biological daughter, but my father loves her like his own. That explains everything. Yi Xian stopped typing on the keyboard of his laptop. He silently looked ahead and said, Actually, General Hua is right. Do you remember how you used to complain to me that Uncle Gu loved Nianji more and not you? Yi Xian turned to hug Gu Yanran as he spoke. Do you remember how I comforted you? Gu Yanran's face flushed. Of course she remembered. Yi Xian had told her, You have me. It was also that night that she gave herself to him after he said that, Xian, luckily I still have you. Gu Yanran took the initiative to hug him. Hua Guanchen returned to his office and thought about the entire incident from beginning to end. Finally, he picked up the phone and called General Ji. General Ji, there's something that I don't know if you know. Hua Guanchen sighed. Nianji isn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. She isn't. General Ji's heart also sank. Who told you that? You can't say something like that. What era are we in now? How can you say she isn't? Have you tested for DNA? Hua Guanchen smiled bitterly. Yes, it's precisely because of the era that we're in. With DNA verification, it's definitely impossible to slander someone casually so they won't lie. Oh. But when they went to Barbados to bring Gu Xiangwen back, they also said that they had detailed evidence to prove that Nianji is Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. General Ji stood up. What exactly is going on? Hua Guanchen was also confused by General Ji's words. However, he carefully thought about the tricks his son had played and understood. He chuckled. Maybe we all misunderstood? At that time, they said that Nianji was Gu Xiangwen's daughter, but they didn't say that she was his biological daughter. I asked Gu Yanran, and she personally confirmed that Nianji is Gu Xiangwen's adopted daughter. An adopted daughter who had gone through legal adoption procedures, so of course she was Gu Xiangwen's daughter. Of course, he couldn't say that Hua Xiaoheng and the others had made a mistake or lied to someone. At most, it would just be a miscommunication that caused everyone to misunderstand. However, General Ji's brows furrowed. This was such an important matter, but Hua Xiaoheng hadn't mentioned it to him at all. Haha, what kind of tricks is this kid playing? However, this matter still needed to be verified to make sure that Gu Yanran was right before making a decision. Furthermore, General Ji's thoughts went even deeper. He believed that Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't hide it from him forever. When he got what he wanted, he would definitely tell him the truth. However, the truth was that no one wanted to be kept in the dark by someone they had raised with their own hands. Also, if he had known that Gu Nianji was only an adopted daughter, he wouldn't have been so eager to help Hua Xiaoheng pass her background check. Now that everything was done, he finally realized that he had been played. It was hard to describe how he felt. He really admired Hua Xiaoheng, but this matter still made General Ji very angry. He thought to himself, this kid actually dared to lie to me, his direct superior, for a girl. He didn't even tell me half of the truth and kept the other half to himself. This kind of bad practice shouldn't be encouraged. Just like a very dedicated gardener, what would you do when you see your carefully cultivated tree grow crooked? Of course, you would pick up a pair of scissors and cut off all the crooked branches. It took 10 years to grow a tree and 100 years to nurture a person. It was so difficult to find a qualified and suitable successor. General Ji sighed as he made up his mind. Since Hua Xiaoheng cared so much about Gu Nianji, to the extent that he was willing to pay lip service to his direct superior, who had directly promoted him, then he really had to pay attention to Gu Nianji's influence on Hua Xiaoheng. Since ancient times, heroes had always had a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman, but General Ji couldn't let him fail. Even if he had to cut off the beauty, he couldn't let him fail. This time he would take it as a lesson to Hua Xiaoheng and pour cold water on Gu Nianji. He had to make her realize that to Hua Xiaoheng, the most important thing was always the interests of the country, the military, and the people. It wasn't love. It wasn't her. As for Hua Xiaoheng, he had to remember this time. Let's see if he still dared to avoid the important and dwell on the trivial, and hide and lie to him. However, General Ji also knew that this matter couldn't be blown out of proportion. If it did, it wouldn't just be his own dissatisfaction, but the anger of the entire Supreme Council. These people would not hesitate to remove Hua Xiaoheng from his position and replace him with their own people. Hua Xiaoheng was very capable, but without the opportunities General Ji had given him, he wouldn't have been able to achieve these results no matter how capable he was, because he wouldn't have had the opportunity to go on missions and achieve results. In the short time that Hua Guanchen spoke, General Ji had already gone over the entire matter a few times in his mind and determined the attitude he needed to display. When Hua Guanchen finished speaking, General Ji smiled calmly and said, "I see. To love Nianji more than his own daughter, that's not normal. When it comes to Nianji, the person who raised her dotes on her more than the person who gave birth to her." "Ah, I have a call. I'll take it first. Guanchen, hold on, I'll call you back." Seeing that General Ji didn't seem to mind, Hua Guanchen breathed a sigh of relief. He was also worried that General Ji would hold a grudge against Hua Xiaoheng because of this matter. After all, this matter could be big or small in nature. But now that General Ji obviously wanted to keep the peace, Hua Guanchen couldn't be happier. However, he and General Ji had the same thought. They were both secretly shocked that Gu Nianji had such a great influence on Hua Xiaoheng. They couldn't tell normally. They originally thought that Hua Xiaoheng was willing to marry Gu Nianji purely for the benefit of the country and the military. Now it seemed that it wasn't that simple. It wasn't wrong for a son to have his own thoughts now that he was older, but it wasn't the behavior of a man to place all his thoughts on relationships. Hua Guanchen put down the phone and looked at the rescue plan he had come up with. After some thought, he crossed out highest standard and wrote medium standard. If he wasn't worried about Hua Xiaoheng and worried that Hua Xiaoheng would destroy him if something happened to Gu Nianji, Hua Guanchen wouldn't even want to use medium standard. He wanted nothing more than to call the Huaxia Imperial Consulate in Munich and ask them not to give special treatment. Gu Nianji was just a normal citizen of the empire, so they could just follow the rescue procedures for normal citizens overseas and ask the local police to investigate. They couldn't interfere with other countries' internal affairs. Of course, he was only thinking about it. If he really did that, his son would definitely fall out with him when he returned. And their fragile father-son relationship couldn't withstand any more twists and turns. After putting down Hua Guanchen's internal call, General Ji looked at the files of the 3 members of the Gu family and called his personal secretary, Secretary Chao. The 3 members of the Gu family don't have a DNA record on their IDs. Go get it from Qinlai. Secretary Chao knew that the important people the military paid attention to all needed a DNA record. Otherwise, who could change their appearance and fake it? How could they verify the authenticity? Yes, Chief. I'll call him right away and ask if Dr. Qin has it. Secretary Chao nodded and took note of General Ji's task. After Secretary Chao left, he picked up the black phone on his desk and called the Special Operations Forces. No one had called him just now, so General Ji had only found an excuse to hang up on Hua Guanchen so he could get someone to investigate the truth. Secretary Chao picked up the phone and said politely, "Operator, I'm Secretary Chao from the First Office of the Military Office. Please connect me to Dr. Qinlai. I have something to verify with him." The operator was so scared she didn't even dare to breathe. She immediately said, "Yes, Chief." She quickly transferred the call to Qinlai's office, but it was Yi Zieten who picked up. The operator quickly asked, "Dr. Yi, is Dr. Qin there?" Yi Zieten smiled. "Dr. Qin is doing an experiment and can't leave right now. What's the matter?" The operator let out an "ah" in disappointment. "But the bureau chief is waiting to speak to Dr. Chen." "Chief? Which chief?" Yi Zieten said anxiously. "We can't keep the chief waiting." "It's Secretary Chao from the First Office of the Military Office," the operator said nervously. She didn't want to keep them waiting. "Then take the call." "I'll talk to Secretary Chao," Yi Zieten said quickly and sat down on Qinlai's seat. "Okay, please wait." The operator's job was to take the call. Of course, it was up to Secretary Chao whether or not to speak to Yi Zieten. She took the call back and asked Secretary Chao, "Chief, Dr. Qin is doing an experiment and can't leave right now. Dr. Yi Zieten asked if you have any questions you can ask her." The chief secretary was also the chief to them. Secretary Chao thought about it. Yi Zieten was like Qinlai's assistant and was also one of the medical staff who took care of Gu Xiangguan. He nodded and said, "Okay, Dr. Yi, it will be." The operator quickly connected the calls to Secretary Chao and Qinlai's office. Of course, Yi Zieten was on the other end. This was the first update of 4,000 words. There was a second update to follow. Today it was still the third update asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thanks to Chidian's Du Rua Hanxiang lost her account, Molly 0707 Heaven's Beggar, and the goddess is here, for the 10,000 Chidian coins each. Chapter 665. Hello. Yi Zitan immediately stood up to greet him as soon as the call went through. Dr. Yi? Secretary Chow could sense the nervousness in Yi Zitan's voice and laughed heartily. I wanted to ask Dr. Chin something. Do you know? Please ask. I'll tell you everything I know as long as I know. Yi Zitan looked around the office to make sure there was no one else around. She twirled the phone cord around her finger and tried to calm herself down. Okay, it's like this. There are no DNA records for the 3 Gus in their files. I wanted to ask if Dr. Chin has them. If you do, please send a copy to the number 1 military office. Yi Zitan quickly said, there are records. Are they not in the Gus files? Didn't Dr. Chen send them already? Oh, but not directly to General Ji. For Hua Xiao. Secretary Chow's heart skipped a beat. He understood what Yi Zitan meant. Even if something was wrong, it was Hua Xiaoheng's fault and not Chen Lai's. But what was Hua Xiaoheng's relationship with General Ji? It wasn't something this little doctor could sway. Secretary Chow laughed and said, oh, then we might have missed it. It's fine. As long as you still have records, send us another copy. After thinking about it, Secretary Chow said, when Chen Lai finishes his experiment, have him personally send it to the number 1 military office. Just look for me directly. Thank you, Dr. Yi. He hung up. Yi Zitan put down the phone and sighed slightly. She lowered her head and felt sorry for Gunyanji. But this couldn't compare to her pursuit of the pinnacle of medicine. She wanted to become a national miracle doctor, even better than Chen Lai. But her talent was limited, her family background was average, and she didn't have Gunyanji's good fortune. She had to rely on herself. If she didn't have luck, she would create it for herself. Yi Zitan turned on her computer and was fascinated by the breakthrough in virus research that Chen Lai had sent her. Chen Lai finished his experiment and came out. Yi Zitan quickly turned off the computer and said to him, Dr. Chen, Secretary Chow from the number 1 military office, General Ji just called you. He asked you to send them a copy of the DNA records for the 3 Gus. Chen Lai's heart sank. He immediately knew that he could no longer hide Gunyanji's past. He and Hua Xiaoheng had been intentionally or unintentionally hiding the fact that Gunyanji wasn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. They wanted to wait until they could give Gunyanji more protection in the future. It would be best if they could wait until Hua Xiaoheng and Gunyanji got married. But now it seemed like he couldn't hide it anymore. Who would be so shameless as to reveal this matter? Chen Lai didn't say anything. With a stern expression, he took out the DNA test report of the 3 Gu family members and placed it in a red top-secret document bag. He called a few soldiers from the Special Operations Forces to accompany him to General Ji's military office number 1. General Ji's expression didn't change at all. He just sat alone in his office for half an hour without reading a single word of the documents in front of him. He didn't believe that Chen Lai hadn't done a DNA test on Gu Xiangwen and Gunyanji. He also didn't believe that Hua Xiaoheng didn't know anything about this. Come to think of it, when he thought back to when Hua Xiaoheng had gone to Barbados to pick up Gu Xiangwen, it seemed like they already knew that Gunyanji wasn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. That was why the evidence they had was Gu Xiangwen's youngest daughter's DNA and dental records, not Gu Xiangwen's own. So how did they know that Gunyanji was Gu Xiangwen's adopted daughter? And where did they get the information to prove that she was his adopted daughter? These legal documents seem to be from a long time ago, right? How did Hua Xiaoheng and his men know? There were so many questions swirling in General Ji's mind. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious he felt. Not long after, Secretary Chow came in to report, Chief, Dr. Chen Lai is here with the DNA test report of the 3 Gu family members. General Ji quickly raised his hand. Let him in. Chen Lai walked in anxiously with the document bag stamped top secret. He stood in front of General Ji's desk and pushed his round glasses up the bridge of his nose. Sweat was beading on his chubby face like a layer of oil. General Ji didn't say anything. He sat behind the desk and looked up at Chen Lai through his reading glasses. The heavy pressure almost made Chen Lai's heart jump out of his chest, but he still stiffened his neck and persevered. He didn't bend under General Ji's gaze. After a long time, General Ji pointed to the chair in front of the desk. Sit. Chen Lai secretly sighed in relief. He placed the document bag stamped top secret on General Ji's desk and said, Chief, these are the documents you wanted. He then said, I was wrong in this matter. I will apologize to you. I should have reported this to Hua Xiao earlier, but I was busy with work and forgot. When I remembered, Hua Xiao had already left for his mission. I originally planned to hand it to him when he returned, but I didn't expect you to remember already. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Please punish me. General Ji looked at Qinlai and said with a dark expression, "It's only your fault? You forgot to mention that Xiaoheng is such a meticulous person. How could he forget to ask? Are you blocking a knife for him, or are you handing a knife to his opponent?" She actually wanted to cover for Hua Xiaoheng. Not betraying Hua Xiaoheng was commendable, but trying to play tricks in front of the leader was not a wise move. General Ji's expression was still dark as he took the document bag stamped "Top Secret" from the desk. He opened it and took out the 3 DNA test reports. The 3 reports were very well done. The data was detailed and the comparisons were clear. The medical terminology and professional explanations were on par with each other. Even people who didn't know anything about the field could see it clearly. Gu Nianji was indeed not Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. Gu Yanran was Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. General Ji couldn't help but recall when Gu Yanran first came into contact with them, she had clearly expressed that she wanted Hua Xiaoheng's protection. At that time, if they had known that Gu Yanran was the biological daughter of the owner of the blueprints they were looking for, they wouldn't have rejected her like that. It could only be said that she had bad luck. Gu Nianji had good luck. She was a lucky general. General Ji didn't say anything after reading it. He put the 3 reports back into the document bag and resealed it. Then he stamped his own red stamp on the seal and dialed the internal line for Secretary Chao to come in. He handed the document bag to him. "Take it and file it. Top secret." Secretary Chao took it with both hands and smiled as he took it out. General Ji finally asked Qinlai, "Where did you get the evidence when you went to Barbados to look for Gu Xiangwen?" Qinlai choked and mumbled, "You'll have to ask Hua Xiao about that. I really don't know. I went when Hua Xiao told me to go. I investigated whatever he told me to investigate. The only thing I forgot was to remind him to file these 3 reports." "Ah, fine. You can go back first. Let Secretary Chao come in." General Ji took off his reading glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I still have something to do. I'll call you for a meeting when Xiaoheng comes back." This kind of disorganized and undisciplined behavior had to be stopped. Qinlai walked out with his head down and met Secretary Chao at the door. Secretary Chao smiled and greeted him before entering General Ji's office. "Chief, Dr. Chen was very upset just now." Secretary Chao sat down with a smile. "Did you scold him?" "Actually, it wasn't Dr. Chen's fault. I heard from Dr. Yi that Dr. Chen gave the records to Hua Xiao. Hua Xiao was probably too busy and in a hurry to go on a mission, so he didn't hand it in time." Young people don't learn from their mistakes. We have to teach them a lesson." General Ji snickered and took out a document. "Do you think I don't know what his relationship with Xiaoheng is? Go take these down. Keep an eye on the Special Operations Forces and don't let them show any signs of forming another faction. Now that Xiaoheng isn't here, we have to be wary of people causing trouble. Someone dared to insult Hua Xiaoheng in front of him. When the tiger wasn't home, the monkeys were going to cause trouble." Secretary Chao quickly stood up. "Chief is right. The Special Operations Forces can't fall into chaos without Hua Xiao here." He picked up the document General Ji had given him and went to assign work. General Ji finally picked up the phone from earlier and called Hua Guanchen. "Guanchen, this isn't a big deal, but it's not a small deal either. Let's do this for now. We have to find Nianji at all costs. We have to find her as soon as possible. If necessary, we can use all our resources in Germany to rescue her." Hua Guanchen froze. He had just lowered the requirements, but General Ji still insisted on the highest. He thought that their only target was Gu Xiangwen from the beginning. Gu Nianji used to be the closest shortcut to Gu Xiangwen. Now that Gu Xiangwen had been brought back and his biological daughter, Gu Yanran, had also come to the Wuxia Empire, Gu Nianji wasn't that important anymore. To be honest, if it weren't for Hua Xiaoheng, Hua Guanchen wouldn't have wanted to send people from the Wuxia Empire to Germany to search. He would have only asked the consulate to urge the local police to search. However, he didn't expect General Ji to still insist on using the highest standards to find Gu Nianji. Of course, Hua Guanchen couldn't argue with General Ji. He could only obey his superior's orders. General Ji said sternly, "This must be kept a secret. I'll kill whoever dares to let Xiaoheng know." Hua Guanchen finally breathed a sigh of relief. Although he was still unhappy, it was much better than before. As long as it didn't affect his son, to be honest, who cared if Gu Nianji lived or died? She wasn't Gu Xiangwen's biological daughter. Putting himself in their shoes, Huo Guanchen felt that Gu Yanran was simply being polite when she said she was closer to her adopted daughter than her biological daughter. Anyone who took it seriously would be an idiot. Huo Guanchen put down the phone and changed the plan of action he had come up with for his subordinates to execute. They still had to rely on the Special Operations Forces to actually execute this plan. Wu Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiao, and Zhao Liangzi weren't there. The Special Operations Forces was in charge of a deputy commander. He received Huo Guanchen's order and learned that Gu Nianji was missing and needed their help. He froze for a moment before immediately ordering his subordinates to investigate. We used to have Gu Nianji's GPS device here. Go check and see if it's still working. In the past, Gu Nianji received the highest level of security. Not only did she have the Special Operations Forces protecting her in secret, but Huo Xiaoheng also equipped her with a top-notch GPS device. As long as the device didn't leave Gu Nianji, it would be a matter of minutes to find her. The person in charge of Gu Nianji's security in the Special Operations Forces immediately went to check the memo to find the frequency and code of the device. He then entered it into the Special Operations Forces central control computer. Through this computer, they could communicate with the Wuxia Empire's self-developed Nandu satellite positioning system. The Nandu satellite positioning system was twice as accurate as Europe's Copernicus and America's GPS. For the next day and night, the colleagues in the Special Operations Forces Central Control Team were busy using the Nandu satellite positioning system's special channel to change the orbit of the satellite above Europe. They targeted the area around Munich, Germany, because that was the last place they knew Gu Nianji had appeared. Then, with that location as a base, they expanded their search in all directions to find her whereabouts. After the orbit change was successful, they still had to perform a lot of calculations to analyze and simulate the data that was sent back. Finally, on the second night, which was in the afternoon in Germany, a small red dot finally appeared on their search map. It was very weak at first, but as soon as it appeared, the operators quickly increased the power of the satellite signal to that area, so the red dot became brighter and brighter. Leader, look at this location. Why isn't it in Munich but near Berlin? The researcher in charge of data analysis was confused. He looked left and right, but wasn't this location a bit too far from Munich? The information they received was that Gu Nianji had disappeared near Munich. Could Gu Nianji have gone to Berlin? Also, was her device still on her? The leader of the Central Data Control Team looked at the data coordinates obtained by the researcher and said in a low voice, "Give this location to our field personnel in Germany. Let them go take a look. We'll send 2 people to receive them." As usual, people going on missions had to go to the Special Operations Forces infirmary for a physical examination. Everyone knew they were going on missions and knew these things weren't to be asked, so no one asked anything they weren't supposed to. Yizitan came over with a list of vaccines and asked, "According to the rules, you need to check if these vaccines have been administered before going on missions. Take a look. If you have, put a tick on the side. If you haven't..." She paused. "Every place has different vaccine requirements. I don't know where you're going, so you'll have to rely on yourselves." This was the second installment of 4,000 words, and there were more to come. I'm begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you for your monthly votes yesterday. It's still the 3rd installment today. If you can still cast more monthly votes, I'll continue with the 3rd installment tomorrow. Also, it's the last 2 days, so please cast your monthly votes. Monthly votes are directly related to my updates. Chapter 666. For example, if they went to Africa, they would need a lot of vaccines such as yellow fever, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, tetanus, cholera, and Ebola. If they went to Central and South America, in addition to the aforementioned vaccines, they would also need to get vaccinated against cerebrospinal meningitis, measles, mumps, and chickenpox. If they went to developed countries like Europe or North America, there would be fewer vaccines, but the mumps, measles, and rubella vaccines were a must. The 2 field agents looked at the booklet Yizitan had given them and pointed to the mumps, measles, and rubella sections. "I think we've been vaccinated before. Could Dr. Yi please help us check if these vaccines have produced antibodies?" It was common sense that getting a vaccine didn't necessarily mean it would be effective. For example, the hepatitis B vaccine couldn't produce antibodies even after being vaccinated several times. Yizitan instantly understood where the 2 field agents were going. Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't say anything. She started to do a blood test on them to check their antibodies. After checking their antibodies and confirming that they had all worked, Yizitan stamped them and sent them out. After they left, Yizitan sent a message to a number. "Mantis is about to move. They should know where Cicada is." Just as they were struggling, they received Yi Zitan's message and were overjoyed. They immediately replied, "Please inform me of Cicada's whereabouts." This stumped Yi Zitan. No matter how smart she was, she couldn't hack into the Special Operations Force's central control system. So she could only send a message. "Follow Mantis." Then she sent the photos of the two field agents to the other side. Following these two was equivalent to following the Wuxia Empire's Nandu satellite positioning and tracking system. In Qinlai's office, he was smoking alone. The room was filled with smoke, and as soon as Yi Zitan entered, she almost choked on the smoke and started coughing. She waved her hand to get rid of the smoke. "Dr. Chen, you're smoking like this and the smoke detector isn't even beeping. Is it malfunctioning?" "I turned it off," Qinlai said sullenly. He glanced at Yi Zitan's concerned expression and his mood instantly improved. He put out the cigarette in the ashtray and raised his hand with a smile. "Fine, I won't smoke anymore. I won't smoke anymore." Yi Zitan gently walked over to clean up the ashtray and said softly, "Dr. Chen, this isn't your fault. You've already told Mr. Hua. If he wants to hide it from the higher-ups." "Shut up." Qinlai hadn't expected Yi Zitan to speak up for him like that and quickly stopped her. Although his heart was warm, he still knew the severity of the situation. He couldn't betray Hua Xiaoheng like that. Yi Zitan blushed at his scolding and quickly put down the ashtray. Tears welled up in her eyes as she choked out, "Dr. Chen, please calm down." "I'm leaving." She walked quickly out of Qinlai's office, still wiping away her tears. Qinlai was extremely anxious, but after a few steps he saw that Yi Zitan was walking even faster. He was too embarrassed to continue chasing, so he could only sigh and come back, locking himself in his office. Moreover, he and Hua Xiaoheng had more important things to hide from the higher-ups. This was what he was most worried about. Thinking about this, Qinlai's mood worsened. He picked up the phone and called Yi Zitan. Yi Zitan answered after a while. "Dr. Chen, it was my fault. You're right to scold me." Her voice was still sobbing and hoarse. Qinlai felt even more apologetic. He lowered his voice and said, Dr. Yi, it was my fault just now. I shouldn't have lost my temper with you. Please don't be angry." "I'm not angry." Yi Zitan sighed. "Dr. Chen, I'm going to look at the documents. Is there anything else?" Although Qinlai had a crush on Yi Zitan for a long time, he still didn't know how to get along with her in order to move her heart. Qinlai put down the phone dejectedly and closed his eyes. He pushed his own matters to the back of his mind and began to ponder about Gu Nianji's past. This was related to Gu Nianji, so he had to let her know in advance. At least he had to know how much Hua Xiaoheng had sacrificed for her. How could he not let her know how much his good brother had done for Gu Nianji? However, Qinlai dialed Gu Nianji's number for a long time and only got the message, "The number you are trying to call is not in the service area." Qinlai stared at his phone with a burning gaze. He wanted nothing more than to see through it. But no matter what, he couldn't get through to Gu Nianji. That was strange. Hua Xiaoheng was on a mission. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were also on a mission. Who should he call? It seemed like Gu Yanran and Gu Nianji didn't have a good relationship. Should he ask Gu Yanran? He might as well wait a little longer. He put away his phone and stopped dialing Gu Nianji's number. He returned to his medical research. Gu Nianji had been living with Reinitz in a small villa near the German capital, Berlin, for over 10 days. September was almost over and October was coming. In the golden autumn, the red maple trees on the outskirts of Berlin began to turn red. Little daisies of all colors bloomed in the flower beds. There were sky blue, purple, pink, snow white, and even emerald green. The small flower beds were decorated with bees and butterflies. It was extremely moving. The weather was neither hot nor cold. It was practically the best season of the year. However, Gu Nianji was visibly thinning out. She ate a lot every day and didn't exercise much. Logically speaking, she should be gaining weight, but in reality she was very thin. Reinitz saw the two dark circles under Gu Nianji's big black eyes every morning and knew that she hadn't slept well at night. She was here, but her heart wasn't, so her mental state was very poor. She was like a walking corpse, and her body was even showing signs of anorexia. Reinitz was very worried about her health and would find a doctor to check on her every week. As long as they didn't mention drawing blood, Gu Nianji would obediently cooperate with the doctor. And with Reinitz watching, no doctor dared to mention drawing blood for her. "Reinitz, Sirius's physical indicators are very normal. I don't see any signs of anorexia?" the doctor asked in confusion. "Although the symptoms you described are somewhat similar, the most important thing is, does she vomit after eating?" The most typical characteristic of anorexic patients was that they vomited immediately after eating. It was almost a physiological reaction, so they didn't actually eat much, so their bodies didn't get the nutrients they needed. Naturally, they were frighteningly thin. Reinitz was speechless. He thought about it carefully and realized that he really hadn't seen Gunyenji vomit. She ate a lot at every meal and ate very slowly. In a day, eating was the only way to prove that she was still alive. But her body didn't show signs of vomiting, which meant that the signs of anorexia weren't obvious. Or perhaps there was another reason for her thinness. As for what the reason was, Reinitz was very clear. That evening Alice came to visit again. Reinitz took him for a walk in the neighborhood. The two of them walked slowly on the yellow maple path as they talked about Gunyenji. Alice wore a Bluetooth headset and kept in contact with his subordinates as he walked. After walking for a while, he suddenly stopped and leaned in to ask, "What does she want to do?" "Miss Gu is trying to leave the house from the fence in the backyard." The voice of the subordinate who was watching Gunyenji came from his headset. Alice was speechless. Reinitz turned to look at him. "What's wrong?" Alice looked at him with a smile. "Your sweetheart is trying to escape." Reinitz didn't speak for a long time. After a while, he said quietly, "You have so many people watching. How can she escape?" Alice laughed and shook his head proudly. He whistled and was in an extremely good mood. Gunyenji's little tricks were only funny to him. He didn't care about them at all. Reinitz looked at Alice calmly and said dryly, "Actually, she will die if you lock her up like this. Can't you see that? Even if you don't kill her, her life is gradually withering away. Is this the kind of person you want?" Alice was stunned. "What do you mean? I'm telling you." Reinitz interrupted him and turned to look in the direction of his little villa. "Don't you think? She's getting thinner and weaker." When he first saw her, she was also very thin, but she could still tell him that she had a D-cup in high spirits. And now, she sat there every day like the most beautiful statue and didn't even move her eyes. So what? Didn't the doctor say she doesn't have anorexia? Alice didn't understand. Is there something wrong with your brain? Don't tell me what you want to do. Reinitz smiled, but his smile didn't feel happy at all. It was like a faint scratch on a porcelain statue that had cracked open, revealing the dark bottom layer inside. The two of them spoke very quietly. On the maple path in the evening, Alice had a confused expression on his face. Reinitz's face was cold and emotionless, revealing a kind of indifferent handsomeness like a religion. After a while, the two of them continued walking. Reinitz looked at him and said, "All right, what can I do? You're thinking too much. The golden chrysanthemums over there are in bloom. Don't you like them the most? Do you want to go take a look?" The wild golden chrysanthemums were as gorgeous as little suns and looked even more dazzling under the setting sun. There were large patches of wild golden chrysanthemums growing on the small hill near his house. Alice really liked the view. "Really? Then we must go take a look. I went a few days ago and they still haven't bloomed." Alice chuckled as he followed Reinitz to the valley he liked. Walking into the valley full of golden chrysanthemums and looking at the large patches of golden chrysanthemums on the hill, Alice smiled like a child. There was no sign of the sly and cunning man he used to be. Gunyenji had long discovered a pattern. In the past 2 weeks, Alice had come to see Reinitz more and more often. Every time he came, the two of them had to go out for a walk for anywhere from half an hour to an hour. When they left, there would be a lot less people around Reinitz's house. That was because they had all left with ALS. Al's position was very high, so he had a lot of bodyguards with him. Gunyenji felt that this was an opportunity she could use. That evening Alice came again and looked very depressed. Seeing that he was in a bad mood, Reinitz offered to drink with him. The two of them went to the dining room. Reinitz prepared some sausages and pork knuckles. First he pulled ALS to drink beer, then red wine, and finally vodka. Both of them were a bit drunk and their eyes were sparkling. When ALS was drunk he would constantly talk. Gunyenji didn't know what he was saying, but his mouth never stopped. When Reinitz was drunk he would smile at people. His smile was very gentle, especially when he looked at Gunyenji. His gaze moved slightly, and it was as gentle as a feather gently caressing her heart. It didn't use any force, but his presence couldn't be ignored. It was like he was using his gaze to caress her. Unfortunately, Gunyenji was distracted and didn't notice Reinitz's gaze. She kept wondering if Reinitz was really drunk or just pretending to be drunk. After living with him for so many days, they both understood each other. Also, she wasn't an idiot. Reinitz was a very capable person. Gunyenji didn't dare to underestimate Reinitz even if she looked down on ALS. Also, she could tell that even though ALS said that if she ran away, Reinitz would be implicated, she didn't believe it at all. Based on the friendship between ALS and Reinitz, even if Reinitz really committed a heinous crime, ALS would only help him cover it up. He definitely wasn't a person who would put family before righteousness. Of course, this was only Gu Nianji's speculation. As for the truth, it still needed time and facts to prove it. She had planned this for a long time. She wanted to use her own escape to prove whether or not ALS would implicate Reinitz. If he wouldn't, then she could leave with peace of mind. If ALS was really that deranged, then she couldn't just watch as Reinitz was implicated and his future ruined because of her. Gu Nianji had read a lot about how terrifying the Gestapo had been in the past. Wu Xiaoheng had given her a lot of information about it. Today seemed to be a good opportunity. Gu Nianji sat next to Reinitz and continuously poured him wine. Reinitz's dark blue eyes were as clear as the lake. He looked at her as if there was no tomorrow for him. Gu Nianji finally felt that her left ear was burning from his gaze. She instinctively raised her arm and tilted her head to rub her earlobe. The diamond stud on her earlobe reflected the double-petaled lotus chandelier in the dining room and emitted a bright red glow. There seemed to be a very faint red light flashing inside. Of course, Gu Nianji didn't see it, but Reinitz did. His dark blue eyes slowly narrowed, although he was still looking at her gently. He slowly reached out and pinched her earlobe. Gu Nianji quickly dodged to the side and covered her ear. "Why are you pinching my ear?" Gu Nianji's earlobe was very sensitive, and Reinitz's hand was very strong. Although it seemed like he only rubbed it a little, Gu Nianji's earlobe was already red from his fingers. Reinitz put his hand down and couldn't get rid of the smooth and soft texture between his fingers. He felt suffocated and desperately wiped his hand on his pants over and over again. He was really drunk. Only when he was really drunk would he dare to do something he had always wanted to do, which was to pinch her earlobe. This is the third installment of 4,000 words. Asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you all for your monthly votes yesterday. Today is still the third installment. If all of you can still vote, we will continue with the third installment tomorrow. Also, it's the last 2 days. Everyone who can vote has already voted. Monthly votes are directly related to my updates. Chapter 667. However, even though Reinitz was drunk, his drunkenness was different from other people's. He wasn't so muddled that he couldn't recognize people. He just couldn't control his actions. 09 small say net, for example, using his fingers to do what he always wanted to do, which was to pinch Gu Nianji's earlobe. Then, when he felt like it wasn't right, he desperately wiped his hands on his pants. Gu Nianji coldly looked at Reinitz and Al's expressions to make sure they were really drunk. She then poured them another glass of wine and said, "You guys drink slowly. I'm going back to my room to sleep." It was actually only 8 o'clock and Gu Nianji never slept so early. However, Reinitz didn't say anything and watched her leave. He raised his glass and downed the entire glass in one gulp. After he finished drinking, he realized what Gu Nianji had poured him. It was a glass of beer, red wine and vodka mixed together. The ratio was very precise, so not only was the alcohol high, but it was also very intoxicating. After he finished drinking, he slumped over the dining table. His head was dizzy and he couldn't lift it. In the moment he lost consciousness, he thought that he had underestimated Gu Nianji. Meanwhile, ALS had already lost control of his own body. He was dancing around in the dining room and singing his favorite opera, The Magic Flute. Gu Nianji returned to her room. Her heart was beating like a drum, but she still looked calm on the surface. She deftly packed the things she brought with her and quietly sat on the bay windowsill. She watched the quiet night outside to calm her emotions. After a while, she pretended to be thirsty and tiptoed downstairs to find water. As expected, she saw Reinitz drunk and unconscious in the dining room. Alice was hugging a bottle of wine as he sat on the dining room floor and continued singing the opera. Gu Nianji smiled and came out to wave at Al's 2 guards at the door. As soon as they saw her come out, the 2 guards greeted her and asked, "May I ask where Miss Gu is going?" Gu Nianji shook her head. "Your superior is drunk. The house smells like alcohol." She then pointed to the door. "Aren't you going in to take a look? Your superior is so drunk he's already singing the opera." The 2 young guards were amused by Gu Nianji's words. They came in to take a look and said together, "Then we'll take Mr. Alice and leave. Good night, Miss Gu." 09 small say net. Gu Nianji nodded and said with a smile, "Good night, take care." She waited until the 2 guards carried Alice to the car and left before she turned around and went back into the house. Reinitz was still drunk in the dining room. He was sound asleep, his eyebrows furrowed tightly, one hand clenched into a fist and pressed it under his chin. His entire body was tense as if he was having a nightmare. Gu Nianji's emotions were very complicated. She looked at Reinitz for a while, then tiptoed upstairs to her room. She carried her Hermes Veru bag and wrapped the nun's habit into a bundle. She used plastic wrap to wrap some bread and muffin to eat on the road. She looked back at the room she had stayed in for more than 10 days, then carried a thin woolen blanket on the bed downstairs. When they arrived at the dining room, Gu Nianji gently covered Reinitz with a thin blanket. It was already late September and the nights in Berlin were chilly. Gu Nianji didn't want Reinitz to sleep like this all night. He might get sick. Straightening up, she looked back at the room one more time before turning to leave quickly. Coming out of the main door, she gently closed it and walked briskly towards the maple path outside the door. She slowly walked alone on the maple path at night. She thought to herself that if she wasn't under house arrest, she would actually quite like it here. Unfortunately, she couldn't stand days like this. Sometimes she also thought about how when she first started following Huo, it was actually similar to being with Reinitz. There was also no freedom of movement. But the difference was that she was willing to follow Huo and be his accessory. She only felt safe when she was with him. She wouldn't even want to leave if he kicked her out, let alone sneak away. It wasn't like now, when she tried every possible way to escape because she was unwilling to be under house arrest. Why did this change happen? Was it because she had already grown up? As Gu Nianji thought about it, she keenly sensed that someone was still following her. 09 small say net. This was also expected. She didn't think that she would be able to successfully escape by relying on a few bottles of wine to knock out those two people. Also, there were so many guards and stalkers. How could she hide by herself? So she actually had another brilliant plan. She just had to turn another corner to reach an intersection. This intersection was a fork in the road. Usually, there was no traffic at all because Reinitz's small villa was in a very remote location. It would take more than an hour to reach the nearest bar. However, there was a place at this fork in the road that was a blind spot for the people following her. As long as she hid in it, the people behind her wouldn't be able to see how she disappeared. They would only think that she had walked to the corner ahead and immediately chase after her. She had discovered this place once when she followed Reinitz out for a walk. At the time, she didn't say anything and only silently memorized this place. This time it was exactly as she had imagined. Not long after she hid in it, two handsome white men in civilian clothes had already hurriedly run past the intersection in front of her. The two stood at the fork in the road and quickly made a phone call. Then, one went left and the other right to chase after her. Gu Nianji waited for them to leave before coming out of that place and sprinting in the direction of the bar. She hadn't run for many days, and her body hadn't been able to absorb all the food she had eaten recently. After running for a while, she began to pant with stomach pain. She held her stomach and sat under the tree for a long time before it subsided. She looked up and saw the moonlight and stars through the gaps in the leaves. She was so moved that she wanted to cry. She was finally out. Finally free. As long as she could run to the bar, she could find a place to surf the internet or borrow a phone or cell phone. As long as she could contact the outside world, she had nothing to fear. She rested for a while and stood up when she felt that her legs were strong enough to continue running to the bar. The bar was considered a relatively large public place in this area. As long as she got there, everything should be better. Gu Nianji only discovered that her body was much weaker than before after escaping this time. She had originally thought that she had a special constitution, but now it seemed that other than her healing speed being slightly faster than normal people, she wasn't invulnerable. She would get sick and weak. If she was in a bad mood, she would be more easily frustrated than normal people. Thinking of this, Gu Nianji felt much better. Sure enough, there were gains and losses. She wasn't a monster. She looked around to make sure no one was following her before slowly walking to the bar. Normally, it would only take an hour to walk, but because she was weak, it took her nearly 2 hours to reach the bar. What scared her even more was that as soon as she reached the bar's entrance, she heard the piercing sound of sirens coming from the road behind her. A black vehicle and motorcycle carrying soldiers and police in black uniforms headed to the other side of the small road. That was the direction that Gu Nianji had come from, which was also the direction of Reinitz's small villa. Gu Nianji shivered when she saw the sinister logo on the vehicles. That was the logo of the Federal Intelligence Agency. It was a modified version of the Gestapo emblem. It was ALS. ALS must have chased after her. Gu Nianji didn't expect them to arrive so quickly. When ALS was dragged away by the two guards, he was already drunk and unconscious. But thinking about it again, she was also delayed for 2 hours because of her weakness, so there was really no other way. Gunyenji gritted her teeth and pushed the door open to walk into the bar. It was already past 10 at night, and the bar was already closed. She didn't see any bartenders or customers outside. There was no one in the empty hall. Gunyenji thought about it and walked to the back hallway. There was a small door at the back with 2 words written in German. Gunyenji vaguely recognized the words, "employees only." This meant that this was a place for employees only, and customers should not enter. But Gunyenji couldn't care less. She pushed the door open and walked in. There was a beautiful blonde woman sitting on the sofa in the room. She turned around and glanced at Gunyenji. Gunyenji felt dizzy and instinctively looked away. She said awkwardly, "Excuse me, can I borrow your phone?" The woman raised her eyebrows and immediately smiled. She stood up and said, "Sure." Just as she was about to take out her phone to give it to Gunyenji, she suddenly heard a roar from outside, followed by a series of orderly footsteps. The sound was so loud that the floor of the small bar shook. Gunyenji was even more frightened, but she forced herself to look calm. She reached out to the woman to take the phone. Suddenly, someone shouted from outside, "Is anyone there? Come out. Police on a case. Everyone come out." Gunyenji was so scared that her face turned pale. Didn't those cars already go there? How did they catch up so quickly? She looked at the blonde woman pleadingly and shook her head. The woman looked at her silently and said in German, "Are they here for you?" Gunyenji stuttered a few words before speaking in English. "I was captured by them and placed under house arrest in another place. I just escaped. Please save me." So she looked at her imploringly, and in the eyes of the blonde, the pretty oriental girl before her was as timid as a frightened lamb. This kind of panic, this kind of fear, this kind of vulnerability. No one would feel threatened by such a little girl, right? Then, who were the people who placed her under house arrest and chased her? Were they from the mafia or the police? From the sirens of the police cars, it should be the police. The blonde woman looked at her blankly with a complicated expression. It seemed like she was considering whether to believe Gunyenji or to hand her over. This was the first night watch. Today was still the third night watch, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. The second night watch was 12 noon, and the third night watch was 7 p.m. Thank you to Chidian's _sing for the 20,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Today was the last day of March. If you don't vote, your monthly votes will be invalid. Chapter 668. Gunyenji looked sincerely at the woman in front of her. She could clearly see that this woman had a chivalrous aura, or perhaps it could be called a domineering aura. She was easily protective of weaker people or animals. She couldn't possibly be indifferent to her pleas. At this time, Gunyenji felt that asking a stranger for help was even safer than going to Smith and the others. Who knew if the Trojan horse in Smith's phone was still a sex addict? If they still hadn't discovered the Trojan horse, then she would be walking right into a trap if she called them. The blonde woman looked at her again and seemed to have made up her mind. Gunyenji was delighted. Hearing someone call her out again, the blonde woman quickly pushed the sofa away to reveal a tunnel under it. She said in English with a German accent, "Go down. We'll talk when I come back." Gunyenji quickly thanked her and jumped down without another word. The woman covered the floor and pushed the sofa back. Then she messed up her hair and loosened her collar, looking as if she had just woken up. She walked out flirtatiously and lit a cigarette in her hand. She said lazily, "What's the matter? Sir? My bar is already closed. But if you want a drink, I can make one for you myself." She even winked at the handsome man. Standing in front of her was a tall, handsome man with feminine features. It was ALS. His eyes were still red, and it was obvious that he was drunk but had been forcefully awakened. "No need. Let me ask you, has an Asian woman been here before?" LS took out his phone. There was a photo of Gunyenji that he had taken at some point in time. She was sitting on the bay window. Her white veil fluttered in the wind, and her black hair flew. Her black eyes were bright, and she had a faint smile on her face. She looked like a forest elf. The blonde lady owner smiled when she saw it. "Oh, what a beautiful girl. Is she your lover?" Ellis almost couldn't stand straight. He glared at the lady owner. "What lover? She's a fugitive." "A fugitive? Fugitive? What crime did she commit?" The blonde lady owner looked curious. "She's so beautiful. I wouldn't forget her if I saw her." "Sir, is there a reward for capturing her?" "You know, I have a small business here and I often can't borrow money. If there's a reward, I'll ask my men to keep their eyes open. If they see this little girl, they'll immediately call the police, okay? Only then was Ayla satisfied. He nodded and said, yes, of course there's a reward and it's a lot. It's enough to buy your little bar. So many? The blonde boss lady's eyes shone with greed. She patted her snow-white, plump chest and promised, I will catch her. No, I won't wait here. I want to go out and see if she's hiding at the foot of the mountain or in the woods by the lake. There's also a big valley nearby. There are many caves in there that can hide people. The more she spoke, the more excited she became. She could not wait to call her staff to look for it. After all, money could move people's hearts. Alice looked as if he had been convinced by her. He nodded slowly. I forgot about the valley nearby. Let's go. To the valley. He turned around and left. The sound of his tall military boots echoed on the floor of the bar. Hearing their voices gradually fade away, the blonde boss lady returned to the staff-only room. She closed the door and pushed the sofa away. She lifted a piece of floorboard under the sofa and said, come out. They're all gone. Gunyenji popped her head out from the basement stairs and looked outside. The blonde boss lady reached out for her and pulled her out. Gunyenji climbed up from the basement and said quietly, thank you for helping me. I didn't think they would find me so quickly. It's okay. I'm closed today so no one saw you. Don't be afraid. The blonde boss lady looked at her. Tell me, what did you do? That man just now wasn't a normal police officer. He's a soldier. I recognized his epaulets. He should be a colonel. She paused. Such a young colonel, he must have done a lot of meritorious deeds. She glanced at Gunyenji from the corner of her eye. Her expression became suspicious again. Gunyenji smiled and told the woman about Al's identity. That man just now, was he wearing a black uniform? He was very handsome but also very feminine? Oh, I think so. What? Are you really his lover? The blonde lady boss's eyes widened, and her expression became thought-provoking. Could it be that he raped you and you refused to submit to him, so he imprisoned you? What a sadistic love. I like it. Gunyenji couldn't help but feel speechless. Why was this boss lady so unreliable? Her imagination was so melodramatic. Why didn't she go write web novels? Gunyenji couldn't help but curse inside, but she still smiled weakly. She said timidly, "No, I offended a powerful person and that person wants to harm me? Oh, that sounded even more melodramatic. Oh?" The blonde boss lady's eyes widened. Powerful person? Oh. Gunyenji looked down. I don't dare to say his name. If I have the chance to escape, I'll definitely tell you who he is. She was so pitiful. She didn't even dare to say the name of the person who harmed her. The boss lady looked at her with pity. Okay, then don't say it. I believe you. What are your plans? Gunyenji thought about it. It's already very late. Can you let me stay here for the night? I'll leave early tomorrow morning. Okay, that's not a problem. The boss lady was very forthright. There's a staff dormitory behind here. It was originally for my 2 guys on duty, but business is getting slower and slower. Everyone leaves before 10 at night, so there's no need to be on duty. Since there's no one staying here, you can make do with it for the night. Gunyenji nodded and remembered her phone. She said to the boss lady, "Can I borrow your phone?" The boss lady quickly unlocked the fingerprint lock for her. Take it. Call your family? Gunyenji nodded and took the phone. She instinctively wanted to call Huashao In Shixiang or Zhao Liangzi, but her finger slid on the boss lady's phone. She still dialed Hijichu's number. She didn't want to leave Huashaoheng's In Shixiang's or Zhao Liangzi's numbers on other people's phones. Their numbers were top secret and couldn't be known by outsiders. There were many consequences when a person's phone number was known by others. None of the consequences were acceptable to people in Huashaoheng's line of work. However, Hijichu's phone rang for a long time but no one picked up. Even his voicemail didn't appear. It was like he couldn't be reached at all. Gunyenji was confused. Was Hijichu not back yet? She had been under house arrest in Reinitz's small villa for the past 10 days and hadn't contacted the outside world. She didn't even see Hijichu's name appear in the Li Haiqing case. What was going on outside? Gunyenji desperately wanted to return to Munich. But she couldn't do it now. Us was outside with his men searching for her. She had to wait until tomorrow or the day after when the security here was lax. The owner looked at her sympathetically. Can't get through? Or is no one picking up? I don't know. Gunyenji shook her head and handed the phone back to the owner. Thank you. She then asked, do you have a computer here? Can you surf the internet? The owner nodded. We have a laptop. My two friends and I usually watch movies and play games. You can use it if you want. Gunyanji was overjoyed. She followed the owner to the staff's temporary dormitory to stay and wait for tomorrow. Before the owner left, she handed the laptop to her. Make do with it. It's very old. Gunyanji smiled brightly and excitedly accepted the laptop. After the owner left, Gunyanji lay on the bed alone and quickly turned on the laptop to connect to the internet. She first browsed the news. It was no different from what she had seen in Reinitz. She looked again and saw there was no instant messaging software on the computer. She decided to download one and install it. At least she could still contact Machichi. There was an instant messaging software from the Wuxia Empire. Hijichu didn't use it and neither did Huashaoheng and the others. However, Machichi used it every day. Gunyanji happily found the download page and clicked to download it. However, the computer required a password to download things to the hard drive. Gunyanji angrily slapped the laptop. Did the security have to be so strict? The owner had already left. Gunyanji didn't want to call her so late at night to ask for the password to download the software. That would be too much. At most, she would ask the owner when she came tomorrow morning. Turning off the laptop, Gunyanji was a bit sleepy. She yawned and suddenly remembered there was a landline in the bar other than cell phones. That was why she had subconsciously wanted to call the owner's cell phone. All of Gunyanji's sleepiness was gone. She crawled out of bed and went to the lobby of the bar. She found the landline and dialed Hijichu's number again. This time, she dialed the number in his room at the Munich Hilton. The phone rang 3 times before it hung up. She couldn't get through at all. Gunyanji didn't give up and directly called the Hilton's lobby customer service. This time it went through. However, just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard a very quiet clicking sound. She immediately hung up with her heart pounding. She was very familiar with the clicking sound. Someone was eavesdropping on the phone here and was recording it. The clicking sound was the unique sound of an old-fashioned voice recorder when it started up. It was the second watch. Today was still the third watch, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. The third watch, 7 p.m. Today was the last day of March. If you don't vote, your monthly votes will be invalid. Chapter 669. There's still the third shift at 7 p.m. Let's see if you can still vote. If you can, please vote for the Major General. Chapter 670. It can't be? Who's tapping the phone? Could it be that ALS had already discovered her? After all, with the abilities of the Gestapo, National Secret Police, back in the day, tapping phones was a trivial matter. However, after thinking about it carefully, Gunyanji felt that it was impossible. If they had already discovered that she was here, ALS could have just brought his men to break in. Why would they need to sneak around and listen in on the phone? Gunyanji's mind was in a mess, but she didn't dare to make any more calls. ALS could probably think of all the methods she could think of to contact the outside world. As a result, she couldn't even trust the internet. They could tap regular landlines and cell phones, so of course they could also monitor the internet. Also, monitoring the internet was much easier than tapping regular landlines. Gunyanji went back to her room to sleep gloomily. She suddenly realized that she couldn't call it an escape because she was still under Al's thorough investigation. She didn't know how Reinitz was. Gunyanji originally wanted to test if ALS would put Reinitz in jail, but now she realized she was too naive. How would she test him? Go back and take a look? Haha, ALS must have prepared enough men to wait for her to walk into the trap. The Gestapo's specialty was that they had an all-encompassing network. They covered every single person in a village, a small town, and even a city. There was nowhere to hide. Under such tight surveillance, could she still leave Berlin and go to Munich? Gunyanji couldn't sleep. She got up and turned on her laptop to search for a map of the nearby area. There was a subway 5 miles away from here that would take her to the city or the airport. Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat. She could take the subway there directly to the airport and buy a plane ticket there. However, she quickly became dispirited. She didn't have a passport or a German ID, so there was no way she could buy a plane ticket. So she could only take the train from Berlin to Munich. Gunyanji decided on where she would go the next day before feeling sleepy and falling asleep. She woke up early the next morning and went to the small bathroom to wash up and change into the nun's habit. The people must have told ALS about her escape yesterday, so she could temporarily disguise herself with the nun's habit. There were probably nuns around here. When Gunyanji walked with Reinitz on the maple path, She would sometimes see a convent towering in the mountains that looked like a castle. When she left the staff dormitory, she saw a baseball bat propped up in the corner of the wall. She didn't have anything on her to defend herself, and the nun's uniform was wide and large. It would be too easy to hide a baseball bat inside. She took this stick and stuffed it into the nun's habit. She tied it to the side of her body and put $50 in cash into the staff-only room. The blonde owner remembered that Gu Nianji was there, so she rushed to the bar early in the morning before the employees went to work. Madame almost shrieked at the sight of a nun coming out of the dormitory. After a while she finally recognized Gu Nianji. "You really scared me." She pouted at Gu Nianji. "You plan on going out like that?" Gu Nianji nodded and crossed herself. "Thank you for giving me a place to stay last night. May God bless you." The owner smiled. "That's pretty similar." As she spoke, she handed her a paper box. "I bought you breakfast. Eat it while it's hot before you go." Gu Nianji was hungry and wanted to go out to buy something to eat, but now that the owner had kindly bought it for her, she took it and looked at it. The owner bought her a donut, a bottle of milk, and 2 freshly baked white sausages. Gu Nianji's eyes lit up. She smiled at the owner. "Thank you. I love white sausages." "You're welcome. We only have white sausages here. Everything else tastes terrible." The proprietress giggled. "Sausages are the only thing you can eat in Germany. I studied in Paris, France, and that was a food paradise." Gu Nianji laughed and thought to herself that the real food paradise was in the Wuxia Empire, okay? But she didn't argue with the owner. She smiled. "Thank you. I'll eat on the way. It's getting late. I'd better leave early." Seeing her insistence, the owner didn't force her to stay. She squinted her beautiful green eyes and smiled. "Have a safe journey." Gu Nianji bowed again to thank her and carried the bag of breakfast. In the beginning she was still very happy when she left. She tore a bit of the breakfast the owner gave her and gave it to the wild ducks on the side of the road. Seeing that they were fine, she ate it herself. After eating, she threw the paper box into the trash can and continued on her way. But when she was about a mile away from the train station, Gu Nianji saw a line in front of her. She was walking on a country road, not a main road with cars. Most of the people she saw were mountain bikers. So she was very surprised to see a line on such a road. Gu Nianji walked to the end of the line and asked a kind-looking old woman, "May I ask why there's a line in front of us? Isn't there a pedestrian and bicycle path here?" The old woman laughed. "I heard there's a checkpoint up ahead to catch a fugitive." She didn't seem worried at all. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat. She stood beside the old woman and stood on her tiptoes to look at a group of men in black uniforms standing nearby. Her entire body trembled. Sure enough, they were wearing the same uniform as Alice. It seemed like they were either his colleagues or his subordinates. In other words, they had considered all kinds of possibilities, from the internet to telephones to transportation. Gu Nianji felt like she would be caught by ALS in one fell swoop. She hid her right hand under the nun's robe and angrily gave Alice the middle finger before turning to leave. She couldn't get through here, so she had to think of another way. She wandered around outside for a day. The place wasn't big, so she had explored it thoroughly but still couldn't get out. She didn't want to go back to the bar and cause trouble for the kind owner. In the evening, she discovered that she would have to sleep outdoors again. But this time it was different from the time in the Alps. She had been in pain back then because she had been forced to. But now she was willing because she was willing. She would rather have the sky as her blanket and the ground as her bed than live a carefree life under someone else's supervision. Gu Nianji stretched lazily and easily found an empty spot in the forest to sit down. This was a place where people in the area barbecued. There were also some iron barbecue grills in the open space in the forest. Gu Nianji found some dry wood and leaves and put them in the grill. She lit it with her Zippo lighter and covered it with a lid. It was just right for the fire, and the light wouldn't seep out so it wouldn't start burning. She leaned against the grill and felt exceptionally warm. Gu Nianji drifted off to sleep, but she was alert in her dreams and didn't completely fall asleep. What she didn't know was that at that moment, her earring flashed red again. Not far away from her, 2 Wuxia Imperial Special Operations Forces field personnel wearing Bluetooth headsets had their throats slit from the back with a knife and were buried under the leaves. They had been following the coordinates indicated in the headset and were searching for the Wuxia Empire Special Operations Forces field personnel. Gu Nianji was half asleep. She held her small bag in one hand and a baseball bat in the other. Even in the wilderness, she maintained a state of vigilance that allowed her to jump up and hit the enemy at any time. Suddenly, there was the sound of a dead branch being stepped on again. She was once very familiar with this sound. After her experience in the Alps, it had almost become her nightmare. So she quickly woke up and looked around. The fire in the barbecue grill she was leaning against should have already been extinguished. It was only warm, but it provided enough heat to keep her from freezing. Burp! There was another sound of a dead branch being stepped on again. The corners of Gunyenji's mouth twitched. She quietly got up and carried her baseball bat as she scurried into the depths of the forest. Hiding in the forest, Gunyenji took advantage of the moonlight shining on the clearing in the middle of the forest to see two people walk in from outside the forest and stand in the clearing where she had been. They looked around as if they were looking for something. Under the moonlight, one of them turned his head. Gunyenji saw his face clearly and was instantly shocked. That person was a Chinese person like her. What were they doing here? Gunyenji had been here for more than 10 days and hadn't seen a single Chinese person. She hid motionlessly in the forest and held her breath to see what the other party's goal was. She had always been very cautious, and her encounters over the past few days had taught her that no matter how careful she was, it was never too much. Because she only had one life. The two people circled the open space and also moved their Bluetooth headsets as if they were listening to something. Finally, they looked at each other and said, "It should be here." The signal stopped here, and the coordinates are accurate to within 10 meters. She should be in the forest. That thing is still with her, right? It should be. Otherwise it wouldn't keep moving. The two people whispered to each other. Their voices weren't loud, but they weren't soft either. Gunyenji was confused. What were they trying to do? Just as her confusion was about to reach its peak, the two people suddenly slowly walked towards where she was hiding. It was very dark in the depths of the forest, but the open space in the middle of the forest used for picnics was very bright because of the moonlight. The smiles on their faces were a little strange, but they slowly approached the place where she was hiding. Gunyenji only felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She had always had a little animal's intuition for danger, and now that her intuition was wrong, she was about to sneak away when she heard the two people finally speak. "Miss Gu? Are you here? Don't be afraid, Huashao asked us to save you." It was the third watch. Today was still the third watch, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today was the last day of March, so if you don't vote, your monthly votes will be invalid. Chapter 671. Miss Gu, we've been looking for you for a long time. Didn't you go missing in Munich? Why are you in Berlin? The two of them spoke in Mandarin with perfect articulation and an imperial capital accent. The two of them walked as they spoke in her direction. Gunyenji had longed and struggled for so long, hoping someone would come and save her. She especially hoped that Hua Xiaoheng would appear and save her. However, when the two of them actually said that Hua Xiaoheng wanted them to come and save her, she couldn't believe it. Were they Hua Xiao's colleagues in the Special Operations Forces? They had protected her in the dark before and had never let anything happen to her. The corners of Gunyenji's eyes were wet, and her heart was in turmoil. She wondered if she should go out. She was also a little worried that this was a trap set by the cunning ALS. At that moment, she heard the two of them speak again. "It should be here, right? There seemed to be someone here just now." Gunyenji's heart was in turmoil. She didn't know if she should believe them. However, if she kept quiet and the two of them shouted again, it would probably attract ALS, who was searching for her nearby. What if the two of them were really sent by Hua Xiao? Wouldn't she have missed a chance to escape? She knew clearly that it wasn't impossible to escape Berlin on her own, but the process would be long and tortuous. She was already tired. Gunyenji thought about it for a while and finally made up her mind. She hid the baseball bat behind her and pushed aside the bushes to slowly walk out of the forest. "Excuse me, are you from the Wuxia Empire?" She also spoke Mandarin. Although the two of them had always known that the target they were looking for was here, they were still shocked when she suddenly appeared. Raising his head, he saw a nun dressed in black walking out of the forest. It was really creepy in the dark. However, they quickly regained their senses and were ecstatic. Cicada appeared on her own. One of them walked towards Gunyenji and smiled. "Yes, we are from the Wuxia Empire. You're Gunyenji, right? We've been looking for you for a long time." Gunyenji took a step back and asked, "Where are your IDs?" She didn't recognize the two of them. She didn't know anyone from the Special Operations Forces. Identification? The two of them laughed and thought that their boss was really impressive. He said that this girl was naturally suspicious and wouldn't trust them easily. She would definitely ask them for IDs, so he specifically asked them to bring 2 proper Special Operations Forces IDs. One of the men whipped out a document the size of a passport from his pocket and opened it to show it to Gunyenji. Look, this is my ID. When Gu Nianji heard this, her mind exploded like fireworks. It wasn't excitement, but resentment and anger. These two people were definitely not from the special forces. Gu Nianji knew very well that because of the special nature of the work of the Special Operations Forces, they couldn't even bring their own phones when they went on missions, let alone identification. Who had ever heard of a soldier carrying a Special Operations Forces ID with him to prove his identity? There's no cure for a moron. However, she could not be anxious. How did these two people find her? Gu Nianji still had questions about whether or not they were Al's people. She tilted her head and pretended to be curious. Then how did you find me? The two people in front of her were obviously even more excited. They smiled and said, "You have our GPS device on you. We only need to check to know where you are." Really? Gu Nianji's heart sank. She knew that Hua Xiaoheng had given her very tight security in the past, so it wasn't strange to have such a device. But now it was obvious that there was a mole in the Special Operations Forces. Of course. How else do you think we found you so quickly? The man smiled as he walked closer. His footsteps were a bit hurried, probably because he was too excited. His palm tilted slightly against the moonlight, and a cold light flashed in his palm. Gu Nianji saw that it was clearly a dagger. The uneasiness in her heart finally exploded. Her right hand swung out like lightning from behind her back, and the thick and hard baseball bat whooshed through the air like a metal rod. She scolded fiercely, "Find your head. Do you know that your skin is peeling? I'll beat you to death, you brainless B*T who still pretends to be pretentious." Gu Nianji directly hit the artery on the side of the man's neck. Even though she wasn't very strong, the power of the baseball bat couldn't be underestimated. Her target was accurate and ruthless. The man only felt his vision go black, and the side of his neck was in excruciating pain. Then very quickly, a patch of extravasated blood seeped out from his subcutaneous tissue. His neck turned purple and gradually swelled up into a large bruise. His arm was extremely sore and numb, like the tendon in the elbow had been hit. He couldn't even hold the dagger in his hand, and it fell to the ground with a clatter. Gu Nianji swung the bat and immediately turned to dash into the depths of the forest. She couldn't even see her fingers in the dark forest. Gu Nianji stumbled as she ran and couldn't see where she was going. She hit the side of her face head-on against a tree, and her little face immediately swelled up. The man in front of her thought that Gu Nianji would show herself and ask for identification, so she wouldn't suspect them. He thought it would be a piece of cake. He didn't expect her to suddenly attack and run into the depths of the forest. He wanted to stop her, but the pain was so intense that even his vision was blurred. He reflexively said, "Chase," and collapsed. "Chase what?" "Just shoot." The man behind him hadn't spoken the entire time, but now he was impatient. He didn't care that the man in front of him had already collapsed. He took out a long-handled high-powered pistol with a silencer and a scope. He aimed in the direction Gu Nianji was running and fired several shots. A bullet grazed Gu Nianji's left arm and hit a tree trunk in the forest. Although there was a silencer installed, the sound of the bullet hitting the tree trunk was exceptionally loud in the quiet night. Gu Nianji staggered a few steps forward from the force of the bullet's impact and fell to the ground. She thought she was doomed this time, but she didn't expect the sound of the bullet hitting the tree to attract the police and soldiers that ALS had placed in the area to search for Gu Nianji. A flurry of footsteps could be heard, and Gu Nianji only had time to curl up and hide behind a large tree. Not far away there were a few gunshots and then everything quieted down. The battle seemed to have ended. Gu Nianji heard Al's secret police speak in German. 2 dead. Wait, that's not right. 2 dead here as well. 4 in total. Gu Nianji closed her eyes. There were clearly only 2 people, so why did those people say 4 were dead? Could it be that people from the Special Operations Forces had really come to rescue her? And they had been killed by these 2 people first? Gu Nianji's tears instantly gushed out. She used her hand to cover her mouth and slowly moved towards the other side of the forest. The people searching for her were delayed by the 4 dead people and couldn't catch up to her in time. Or maybe those people didn't even know what the 4 people were doing, so they didn't connect the 4 people to Gu Nianji? In any case, those people didn't continue to chase after her. Gu Nianji only felt grateful. She moved around in the deep forest for a few hours. It was not until the sky was about to brighten that she came out of the dark forest. The moment she exited the forest, she froze. Had she gone in a circle? She had returned to the back door of the bar that she had left yesterday morning. Gu Nianji covered her left arm that had been grazed by a bullet again. She hesitated for a while before walking over and knocking on the back door of the bar. A handsome blonde young man opened the door and saw a nun with half her face swollen. He quickly smiled. "How may I help you, wet nurse?" Gunyenji's arm was in excruciating pain, and her face was swollen. Her voice trembled as she struggled to speak. I'm looking for your lady boss. Lady boss? Oh, wait a moment." The young man nodded with a smile and quickly called the blonde lady boss to the back door. As soon as the lady boss saw the nun's clothes, she immediately recognized her. When she saw that half of her face was swollen and that there was a faint smell of blood on her body, she covered her mouth in astonishment and said in a low voice, "What happened to you? Who hit you?" Gunyenji looked at her and opened her mouth to speak, but her vision went black. Her body went limp and she immediately fainted in front of the lady boss. The lady boss was so frightened that she quickly hugged her and took her to the staff dormitory in the back. When Gunyenji woke up, she found herself lying in the staff dormitory where she had stayed the night before. Her left arm had been bandaged and her nun's uniform had been taken off. The baseball bat that she had taken with her was also placed beside her bed. Gunyenji blushed when she saw the baseball bat. She didn't know if the lady boss had seen the $50 she had put on the table. She didn't have much cash in her wallet. Raising her wrist to look at her watch, she saw that it was already past 2 in the afternoon. She had slept from morning to afternoon. Perhaps it was because she had lost too much blood, but she was a bit thirsty. Just as she was about to get up to find water, the dormitory door was quietly pushed open. The handsome blonde young man that she had first seen at the back door of the bar that morning poked his head in to see that she was awake. He quickly asked, "You're awake?" Then he pushed the door open and entered. Seeing that Gunyenji was about to get up, he quickly helped her up and asked, "What do you want to do?" This was simple German, so Gunyenji understood it very well. She weakly said, "Water, I need to drink water." "I'll get you water." The young man stood up and took a bottle of mineral water from the corner of the wall. He unscrewed the cap and placed it in her right hand. Gunyenji picked it up and drank half the bottle in one go. The blonde young man looked at her and laughed. "Don't be in such a hurry. There's more." Gunyenji was too thirsty, so she drank half the bottle in one go before she felt better. She put the bottle of mineral water on the bedside table beside the bed and said to the young man, "Thank you." This was the first update. Today was still the third update asking for monthly and recommended votes. The second update was 12 noon and the third update was 7 p.m. Today was the first day of April. Don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. Should we add updates based on the monthly votes? Chapter 672. You're welcome. The young man adjusted the thin blanket for her. "Are you hungry? You slept all day. Do you want something to eat?" He continued, "This is a bar, so we only have some snacks. I'll go buy them for you. What do you want to eat?" Gunyenji was so hungry that she almost turned into a paper doll. She pursed her lips and whispered, "Anything is fine. I'm not picky." "Okay." The young man's smile grew wider. "I'll go buy it for you." Gunyenji looked up at him and suddenly said, "Excuse me, can I borrow your phone for a while?" "Sure." The young man generously offered his phone without hesitation. It was also an Apple phone, but it was an older model. To make sure Gunyenji didn't feel awkward, he said thoughtfully, "Take your time to make the call. Don't worry, contact the nunnery. I'll go buy you something to eat first." Did he really think she was a nun? Gunyenji was speechless. The young man left, leaving Gunyenji alone in the room. Gunyenji opened the phone and dialed Hijichu's number again. Just like that day, Hijichu's phone kept ringing, but no one picked up and she couldn't leave a message. Listening to the eternal ringtone, Gunyenji silently rubbed her phone and gained a new understanding of her situation. She gave up on calling him. She thought that regardless of whether Professor He returned from his hometown or not, she probably wouldn't be able to reach his phone. Gunyenji didn't dare call Smith's and the others' phones because she was worried about the Trojan virus. She didn't dare call Hua Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangza on a stranger's phone. Who else could she call? Gunyenji frowned and thought hard. After a while she suddenly thought of Ma Chichi. She could call Ma Chichi. She now knew that the mastermind knew her situation very well, so they wouldn't be wary of an ordinary person like Ma Chichi with no background. Because compared to the other people around Gunyenji, Ma Chichi was a complete passerby. In the eyes of the mastermind, Ma Chichi might be a small fry that they wouldn't take seriously at all. But because of this, she was able to take advantage of their loopholes. She wanted to try and see if she could tear a hole in the inescapable net that person had woven so that she could escape and see the sky of freedom again. Gunyenji had never imagined that Machichi would be the last straw to clutch at when she was in danger. She nervously dialed Machichi's number, but unfortunately as soon as she dialed the number, the German mobile operator sent her a text notification, saying that the phone didn't have international roaming service enabled, so she couldn't call blah blah. Gunyenji rubbed her forehead. She finally felt the god of fate's evil intentions. She had finally found a person who was generous enough to lend her a phone, but this person's phone could not make international calls. Of course, she knew that it was very expensive to call an international number directly, and that young man was working as a waiter in such a deserted village bar. He probably wasn't a rich man with a good family background. Gunyenji didn't want to make such a phone call and cause him to receive an astronomical bill. Most importantly, even if she paid the bill herself, she wouldn't be able to use the international calling service immediately. She couldn't make the call, so Gunyenji looked down at his phone screen and casually dialed. She saw an app that she was very familiar with and her heart instantly pounded. She hadn't expected that this young man's phone would have the most popular instant messaging app installed in the Wuxia Empire. It was the instant messaging app that she had wanted to install on the lady boss's laptop the night before. She had previously heard that the instant messaging app was also very popular abroad in the Wuxia Empire, but she had thought it was just an exaggeration. Now that she saw it, it was indeed worthy of its reputation. However, Gunyenji's eyes turned and she secretly chuckled. What a coincidence. Yes, although she couldn't make international calls, she could use the instant messaging app. See, what a coincidence. Gunyenji's lips curled into a mocking smile. Her fingers tapped lightly to open the app, and she entered the account and password she used in school to quickly log in. It should be around 9 p.m. in the Wuxia Empire. Gunyenji quickly opened her friends list and saw Machichi's profile picture lit up. She immediately sent a message without hesitation. However, Machichi didn't seem to be there at the moment and was only online. She waited for a while but didn't get a response. Then she heard footsteps outside the door. Someone was coming. Gunyenji could only immediately change her mind. Opening their conversation, Gunyenji opened the camera on her phone and quickly said to the camera, Chichi. Chichi. I'm in Berlin. Save me. Then she quickly clicked send and quickly logged out. At the same time, she took a few seconds to erase any traces of her login. Just as she put down her phone, the door opened. The blonde lady boss walked in with a household first aid kit. She smiled and said, You're finally awake. Gunyenji smiled and smoothed her hair. Thank you for taking me in again. I took your baseball bat and put $50 in that room. Did you see it? I saw it. I made a profit. The lady boss winked at her. I only spent €15 to buy the baseball bat, and it's been used for a few years. Plus the depreciation, it's a huge profit. Gunyenji nodded and said calmly, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it. I just wanted something to protect myself. If it wasn't for this. She touched the baseball bat beside the bed. I wouldn't have been able to come see you alive. Speaking of this, the lady boss's expression became serious. What's your name? The police outside are still looking for you. Also, they found 4 bodies in the woods over there this morning. They said they were all Wuxia. As she spoke, she looked Gunyenji up and down with a look of disbelief. It was as if she couldn't believe that Gunyenji, who was so thin that even the wind could blow her over, could kill 4 strong men. Gunyenji revealed a trace of worry as she thought about what the police said late last night. She was very worried that among the 4 people who died, 2 of them were Special Operations Forces field agents. The other 2 must be bad guys who deserved to die. If that was true, then the Special Operations Forces already knew something had happened to her and could use GPS to locate her. But they were killed by the other 2 bad guys, which meant the traitor in the Special Operations Forces had already joined forces with the people who were after her. If the people on the other side knew her whereabouts, then the people who were after her here would be able to find her. Gunyenji's expression was very ugly. She raised her hand and slowly rubbed the diamond earrings on her earlobes. The lady boss saw that she was silent, half her face was swollen, and there was a bullet wound on her arm. She sighed. Don't worry. You definitely didn't kill them. Here, I'll change your bandages. As she spoke, she opened the first aid kit and took out the gauze and medicine inside. She leaned over to untie the bandage on Gunyenji's left arm. Gunyenji reacted and protected her left arm without batting an eyelid. No need to trouble you. Just leave it here. I'll change it myself later. Can you change it by yourself? The lady boss didn't insist. She put the things down and said to her, I heard everyone say that 2 of the 4 people were stubbornly resisting the police and were finally killed by them. The other two were killed by having their throats slit. It was done by the two people who were killed by the police. Are you sure? Gunyanji sat up straight. Her expression became nervous. How did the police confirm it? It's very simple. I heard that the two people who were killed by the police had a dagger on them. Their fingerprints were on the dagger, and the blood of the two people who had their throats slit. They knew it after a comparison. So this case has already been closed. Don't worry. It has nothing to do with you. The lady boss comforted Gunyanji kindly. Gunyanji smiled and pulled at the wound on her face. It hurt so much that she snorted. It has nothing to do with me? I was beaten up like this by them. I only hate that I didn't get revenge with my own hands. The lady boss was curious. Who beat you up? The two people whose throats were slit, or the two people who were shot by the police? The two people who were killed by the police. Gunyanji shrugged. It should be them. To be honest, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known there were two people. I see. The lady boss nodded and stood up. Then you rest. I'll go out first. She reminded her, remember to change your bandages. Gunyanji agreed and watched the lady boss leave. As soon as the lady boss left, the blonde young man who had bought her food arrived. In his hand was a paper bag with an M written on it. It was McDonald's fast food. Gunyanji laughed. Okay, there was McDonald's here too? The young man put the paper bag on the bedside table and said to her, I rode my bike to buy it. It's still warm. Do you want to eat it now? Thank you. Gunyanji nodded slightly and took the paper bag. She opened the box inside and took out a piece of fried chicken. She wrapped it in a paper towel and handed it to the young man. Here, let's eat together. It was already past 3 in the afternoon. It was time for a meal. The young man didn't pretend to be polite. He took the fried chicken from Gunyanji and ate it in big bites. Gunyanji also took some fries for him and poured half a box of milk from McDonald's for him. She picked some food from the paper bag for the young man to eat. She watched with a smile on her face as the young man finished his meal. Then she began to eat slowly. The young man looked very honest and said sheepishly, I'm so sorry. I actually finished before you. It's okay. Gunyanji smiled at him. My face is swollen and I eat very slowly. It's normal for you to finish faster than me. The young man finally smiled and asked her, do you still need your phone? Oh no, thank you. Gunyanji pointed to the phone next to her pillow. Thank you so much. She kept thanking him. The young man was very happy and said, it's good to be able to help you. He seemed to sympathize with her. A nun was beaten up like this and still didn't dare to call the police. It was the second watch. Today was still the third watch, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. The third watch was 7 p.m. Today was the first day of April. Don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. How about 300 monthly votes and 1 watch? If there were 600 votes tomorrow before 7 p.m., then there would be 4 watch tomorrow? Haha, a beautiful wish. Chapter 673. Gunyanji quietly ate McDonald's and calmly ignored the young man's passionate and pitiful gaze. After finishing McDonald's, Gunyanji fell asleep again. In the B University dormitory in the Wuxia Empire's imperial capital, Machichi had just returned to her dorm after studying at night. Out of habit, she looked at Gunyanji's door. It was still tightly locked. There were no lights or people inside. She opened her door and put down her bag. She went to the bathroom to wash her face and sat at the desk under the window. On the desk there was her laptop. She had been bored recently and was playing a game. When she went to the library to study, she would use the computer to level up. She sat down to look at the progress of the game and nodded in satisfaction before exiting the game. As soon as she exited, she saw the little icon of her instant messaging app jumping. Someone had sent her a message. Machichi clicked it open and gasped. It was actually Gunyanji's account that sent her a message. And it was a video. Machichi was overjoyed and quickly clicked on it. The video quickly downloaded and began to play automatically. As soon as she saw the video clearly, her smile froze. In the video, she saw a girl with half of her face swollen and bruised. She was anxiously saying to her, Chichi, Chichi, I'm in Berlin. Save me. Machichi watched it several times before she finally recognized the girl in the video. She gasped. It was Nyenji. Gunyanji. How did she get beaten up like this? Machichi jumped up from her seat and grabbed her hair as she paced around the dormitory. Wasn't Gunyanji with Professor He? How did she get beaten up like this and still need to ask for help? What the hell happened? Machichi was panicking in her dormitory. She remembered that Gu Nianji hadn't replied to her message for a long time and thought she was too busy. Could something have happened? But they hadn't heard anything about it. Ma Qiqi remembered that Gu Nianji went to Germany with Professor He Jichu. Without another word, she began to search for He Jichu's contact information on the department's website. She wanted to find him and find out what happened. She would rather someone had hacked Nianji's chat account to ask her for money than for it to be true. After searching the faculty's intranet for a long time, she could only find He Jichu's faculty phone number and email address. Even an idiot would know that He Jichu was currently doing very well in Germany, so how would he have time to check the department's phone messages and emails? However, although He Jichu was very famous in Germany, Ma Qiqi wasn't infatuated with him, so she didn't pay much attention to his personal whereabouts. How do I find his contact information in Germany? Ma Qiqi's heart skipped a beat. She remembered the He Jichu fan club she had once followed. The fan club's blogger could be considered He Jichu's #1 love-struck fan. His daily routine was to lick He Jichu's beautiful photos from all angles. Ma Qiqi immediately logged onto Weibo and quickly found the He Jichu fan club she had been a fan of before. The first thing she saw was the blogger's pinned Weibo post. It turned out to be a German social media account. Curious, she clicked on it and discovered that the pinned German social media account was actually He Jichu's official German account. Looking at the profile photo, Ma Qiqi could immediately tell that it was Gu Nianji's back. Although the background photo was blurred, Ma Qiqi could still see that it was the B University campus. Soon, her eyes were attracted by the note below the social media account. Waiting for you to come home, damn. Ma Qiqi's heart instantly tightened. Didn't this photo and this note mean that Nianji had gone missing? Even Professor He couldn't find her. Was that why Professor He had changed his low-profile style in the Wuxia Empire and was so high-profile in Germany? In an era as advanced as the internet, Nianji could easily contact Professor He and find her way home. But what if Nianji had really been captured? She thought about the video in which half of Gu Nianji's face was bruised. Because the image wasn't clear, it looked even more frightening. She almost couldn't recognize who it was at first glance. Ma Qiqi flipped through the articles one by one and really had to thank the blogger who was obsessed with He Jichu. She saved all the news about He Jichu in Germany and translated it into Mandarin. She listed, liked and reposted it on her Weibo. It also made it easier for Ma Qiqi to see what He Jichu had been doing recently in Germany. The more she looked at He Jichu's recent schedule, the more frightened Ma Qiqi became. She didn't know if it was because she had a preconceived notion, but she just believed that video. His account hadn't been hacked and he wasn't a scammer. If he really was a scammer, he would probably have already given her a bank account number for her to transfer money to. What kind of scammer would only say where they were but not their bank account number? Ma Qiqi's fingers trembled. Trembling, she downloaded the English version of the German social media app and registered a secondary account. Then she followed He Jichu's official account and immediately sent him a private message. Ai Meng Qiqi, Professor He, I'm Ma Qiqi, Nianji's roommate. I want to ask if something happened to Nianji? I just received a video from her. When Ma Qiqi sent the private message, she didn't think she would immediately receive a call from He Jichu. After all, she saw that the number of fans on that account was already in the millions. An account with millions of fans in Germany was already amazing, so there must have been a lot of people sending him private messages. Also, it was hard to say if He Jichu was personally managing it. Therefore, after sending the private message, she went to the bathroom to shower and get ready for bed. When she came out of the shower, she heard the dormitory's landline ringing like crazy. Every time she transferred the call to voicemail, the other party would hang up and call again. They were very patient. Ma Qiqi was annoyed by the noise and went over to check. There were more than 20 missed calls and the number was from Germany. Ma Qiqi's heart jumped. Could it be from Professor He? This was Professor He's cell phone number? It was completely different from the department's number. Ma Qiqi's heart tightened. She immediately picked up and said, Professor He? Is that you? He Jichu's slightly tired voice came from the other end of the line. Yes, I'm Professor He. Ma Qiqi, you sent a private message to my German social media account. What do you mean? Ma Qiqi quickly asked. Then do you think something happened to Nianji? Where is she now? He Jichu was silent for a few seconds before saying, Why do you ask? The picture of the account you used was Nianji's back, and the comment was waiting for you to come home. Isn't that obvious? Also, you were so low-key in the Wuxia Empire and even more low-key in the United States. It doesn't make sense for you to suddenly be high-profile in Germany. Something must have happened, right? Ma Qiqi analyzed calmly. Although she was so sad she wanted to cry, she held it in. She thought that Nianji was still suffering somewhere. She had to hold on and help her. Save her. Hijichu closed his eyes and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He thought to himself, Nianji's classmates are all so kind and warm-hearted. Birds of a feather flock together. Hijichu thought to himself. Professor He, tell me, did something happen to Nianji? Machichi persistently asked. She gripped her phone tightly and was so nervous her face was red. Hijichu finally replied, I'm looking for her, but I can't find her no matter what. Nianji seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Hijichu almost turned Munich upside down, but Nianji was nowhere to be found. Just 5 days ago he finally couldn't take it anymore and had already sent 4 teams of people to enter the Alps from the north, south, east and west. He wouldn't give up even if he had to plow the entire Alps and Bavaria mountain range. So when he saw Machichi's private message, he reflexively grabbed his phone and found Gu Nianji's dorm number to call. Fortunately, Machichi was in the dorm at the moment. Otherwise, Hijichu didn't know if he would immediately take a private plane back to the Wuxia Empire to find her. Machichi sighed in relief and said, It's like this. I just received a video call from Nianji tonight. Machichi wanted to cry as soon as she thought of Nianji's bruised face. Her voice choked up. She was beaten black and blue. She said she was in Berlin and asked me to save her. Hijichu's mind buzzed and he felt the world spin. His entire body seemed to have lost all consciousness and was floating in a vacuum. It was like his worst nightmare had suddenly become reality. Hijichu's heart burned with rage. He didn't want to continue like this. He wanted to destroy the world. Something really happened to Nianji. Something really happened to her. The person he cherished so dearly still got into trouble in the end. Meeting He Xiaoheng was probably the luckiest thing in her life, wasn't it? Hijichu's tears fell silently. He sat alone in the room and let his tears flow, but he didn't say a word. He clenched his fists tightly. His fingernails weren't long, but they still dug deep holes in his palms. But he didn't feel the pain. He only wanted to clench even tighter because the piercing pain could clear his mind. Hijichu, you can't be muddle-headed. You can't be blinded by hatred. What you need to do now is to hurry and save people. He warned himself over and over again in his heart. After a full 15 minutes, he finally heard what Machichi was saying. Professor He? Professor He? Are you still there? Why aren't you saying anything? Do you want me to send you the video? It's best if you have that instant messaging software and add me as a friend. I can directly forward it. Because Hijichu hadn't said anything, Machichi thought he was troubled. After all, Hijichu was only a professor and not a family member. Machichi could understand if he didn't do his best to save her. No matter how good he was to her before, it probably wasn't more than a professor treating his student well, right? It was the third watch. Today was still the third watch. Asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today was the first day of April. Don't be careless and cast the guaranteed monthly votes. Tentatively 300 monthly votes, plus 1 update. Try. Chapter 674. Machichi didn't expect Hijichu to do his best to save Gu Nianji. After all, no matter how good a professor was to his students, how could it compare to his own family? Machichi only wanted him to watch the video so that Hijichu could truly empathize with Gu Nianji's plight. Anyone who had seen Gu Nianji and seen her swollen face couldn't help but feel the same hatred and desire to avenge her. At least that was what Machichi thought. She only wanted to fight for as much help as possible for Nianji. Gu Nianji must have asked her to save her because she wanted Machichi to help her find help. She didn't want Machichi to go into battle herself. Machichi knew that. Also, Hijichu was the most convenient in terms of distance. Of course, Machichi didn't know that Hijichu didn't need to watch the video to feel his heart wrenched just from hearing one sentence about Gu Nianji. Coming back to his senses, Hijichu immediately downloaded the instant messaging app Machichi mentioned with a cold expression. He quickly added Machichi as a friend and received Nianji's video forwarded by Machichi. As soon as he opened the video, Hijichu's vision blurred again. He reached out and rubbed Gu Nianji's bruised and swollen face on the phone screen. His lips twitched as he tried his best to hold back the tears that were about to fall again. It really was Nianji. So she had been kidnapped to Berlin. He had thought that the other party would hide Gu Nianji in a remote village, but they had gone to Berlin, the capital of Germany. Hijichu stood up quickly and ordered his subordinates, "Prepare the private plane. I want to go to Berlin immediately." Soon Hijichu's profile went dark without saying a word. Machichi sent 2 messages to him but there was no response. You should have logged off, right? Ma Chichi sighed. Yes, they had all secretly envied Gunyenji in the past and felt that Professor he favored her so much that he brought her along no matter what. Now it seemed that Professor he was only a professor when something really happened. Could she count on him to do his best to save her? Ma Chichi thought about it and didn't know what Hijichu would do. She couldn't put all her eggs in one basket. She needed to find more help for Nyenji and couldn't rely on Professor he alone. After all, she was Nyenji's only hope. At that moment, Ma Chichi remembered that Gunyenji used to be an orphan and had only recently found her father. Her father was in a vegetative state and was still lying in the hospital. She also had an older sister whom she didn't really get along with. Gunyenji had told her about these things and had also warned her not to tell anyone else, because Nyenji had said that she wasn't ready to treat them as family yet. Therefore, Ma Chichi instinctively didn't want the older sister, Nyenji didn't like to know about what had happened to her. Who else could they count on? Ma Chichi couldn't help but think of Gunyenji's incredibly handsome boyfriend, Huoxiao, who made people forget to breathe. She also thought of the tall, handsome and secure brother Xiong. They seemed to have been Nyenji's guardians before. Gunyenji didn't talk much about her personal life, so Ma Chichi only vaguely knew from Miao Yunxiao, Gunyenji's first roommate, that Gunyenji's boyfriend seemed to be powerful and had a high position. He was probably even in the military. She remembered seeing a car with a very arrogant military license plate in front of her dormitory. A person like that should have more ability than Professor He to rescue his girlfriend when she was in danger abroad, right? Ma Chichi closed her eyes and propped her head up with her hand. She leaned against the desk and thought about it calmly. But how could she find Gunyenji's boyfriend? The imperial capital was so big and there were many military departments. There were so many soldiers, but she didn't even know his full name. How was she going to find him? Was she going to run to some military department and hold up a sign saying, "Gunyenji's boyfriend, come here. Let's talk about life"? What a moron! Ma Chichi sighed and spun on the round-wheeled chair. Round after round, round after round. Everything in the room was spinning. Just like her brain, it was also spinning at high speed. Where could she find those people's contact information? That's right. Gunyenji's contact information. Ma Chichi's chair suddenly stopped spinning. She suddenly thought of this. When new students enrolled, they would register their family's contact information and family information on the faculty's contact information. Gunyenji was still an orphan at the time. If her information hadn't been changed, then the family's contact information would be her guardian. In other words, it was very likely that it was Huoxiao or brother Xiong's contact information. Ma Chichi stood up from the chair she had just stopped and almost lost her balance. She quickly held onto the desk to steady herself and thought about how to go to the faculty to look up Gunyenji's contact information. Last time their counselor, Gui Suyao, had taken out Gunyenji's contact information and showed it to the faculty student union. Professor he was very angry after that, and Gui Suyao even apologized to Gunyenji. All right. Senior brother is the director of the faculty student union? Ma Chichi muttered to herself and quickly picked up her phone from the desk to call the senior brother who had been pursuing her. Senior brother, are you asleep? Ma Chichi looked at the time on the computer. It was already past 11 p.m. The senior brother had just gotten into bed and was hugging the blankets to read. When he saw Ma Chichi call, the corners of his lips curled up and a smile appeared on his delicate and refined face. He swiped open the phone to take it. Chichi, what's up? Senior brother, it's like this. I have some things I want to contact Nyenji's family about. Can you help me go to the faculty and find out how to contact her parents? Just a phone number will do. Ma Chichi said hurriedly. Her voice was crisp and urgent in the dark night, like little jumping peas. Nyenji? Gunyenji? The senior brother thought about it. The faculty is very strict now. It's not easy to borrow. Senior brother? Good senior brother. I'm begging you. Just help me this once. Ma Chichi acted cute over the phone and even pouted. Unfortunately, the senior brother couldn't see it. However, the senior brother could imagine how cute she looked from her tone and couldn't help smiling. His voice softened. Okay, I'll try tomorrow. That's great. Thank you, senior brother. Senior brother is the best. Senior brother is the best. Ma Chichi beamed and spun around the room with the phone in her hand. She was in a much better mood. Nyenji, you have to hold on. I'll definitely find someone to save you. Ma Chichi didn't sleep much that night and even had a nightmare in the middle of the night. She dreamed that Nyenji was being beaten up and she rushed over to save her, only to be kicked in the butt. Ouch. He really kicked me. Ma Chichi woke up from the pain and realized that she had fallen off the bed. Looking at her phone, she saw that it was already past 6 in the morning. Although she usually woke up past 7, she couldn't sleep today because she had something on her mind. She crawled out of bed with dark circles under her eyes and washed up. She went to the cafeteria to buy 2 hearty breakfasts and delivered them to the senior brother. When she arrived, it was only 7 in the morning. Most of the male graduate students' dormitory were sound asleep. Ma Chichi waited downstairs for half an hour before senior brother finally woke up. She called him and went upstairs with the 2 breakfasts. "You're so lucky. Your girlfriend came just to deliver breakfast." Senior brother's roommates began to jeer. Ma Chichi smiled sheepishly and said, "This is breakfast for senior brother. Don't talk nonsense." "Senior brother? We're also senior brothers. Why don't I see you delivering breakfast to us, Chichi?" The other boys in senior brother's dormitory began to jeer. Ma Chichi was very embarrassed, but she remembered that senior brother would help her get Gunyenji's family's contact information. Therefore, she only blushed and allowed them to tease her. Senior brother took a good look at Ma Chichi's straightforward and timid demeanor before picking up the 2 breakfasts and saying, "Let's go eat outside. Then we'll go to the faculty." Ma Chichi's eyes lit up. "Thank you, senior brother." She followed behind senior brother like a lackey and went downstairs with him to have breakfast with him in the faculty student council office. Then she read in the faculty student council office while senior brother went to the faculty student council teacher to borrow Gunyenji's contact information. The teacher was reluctant at first, but he couldn't resist the fact that he was familiar with the student and had helped him a lot in the past. Now he only said it was to help his girlfriend and find Gunyenji's family's contact information. His girlfriend, Ma Chichi, was indeed Gunyenji's roommate. The teacher thought about it and quietly said to Ma Chichi's senior brother, "Then just look around and remember the phone number. Don't make copies or take pictures." "Okay, I'll just take a look at the contact information." Senior brother didn't want to do anything. Actually, he had already seen Gunyenji's contact information last time, but he didn't remember much information. The teacher secretly pulled up Gunyenji's contact information and showed it to Ma Chichi's senior brother. Senior brother saw the family member's phone number at a glance and read it twice to remember it. He then saw that the family member was Gunyenji's distant uncle. Senior brother was speechless. Coming out of the information room, senior brother smiled and went to the faculty student council office. He said to Ma Chichi, who was sitting there reading, "Anxious? I saw you poking your head out to look at the door every minute." "Senior brother, did you find the contact information?" Ma Chichi put down her book and quickly ran over. She almost pulled on senior brother's arm to shake. Senior brother nodded. "I got it." As he spoke, he gave Gunyenji's family member's phone number to Ma Chichi. Ma Chichi quickly entered it into her phone and saved it. After saving it, she pressed the small call icon. It rang a few times, then a man's voice message appeared. It was a standard phone message, saying that it was not convenient for him to take the call at this time. He hoped that the caller would leave their phone number and explain clearly, and he would reply when he was free. Ma Chichi immediately recognized the voice as Brother Xiong. Don't ask her how she remembered it. Although she had only heard him speak a few times, she was very familiar with his tone and intonation. "This is the first night watch. We have to keep our word. It's already the 4th night watch today. This includes 2 monthly votes plus the first night watch. The second night watch is 12 noon, the third night watch is 7 p.m., and the 4th night watch should be around 9 p.m. Come, don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly votes. The monthly votes have reached 900, so we'll continue to the 3rd night watch tomorrow. Of course, if the monthly votes reach 1,200 before 7 p.m. tomorrow, we'll continue to the 4th night watch. But I don't think the monthly votes will reach 1,200 tomorrow. If we really pass, please don't slap me in the face QAQ. Chapter 675. Ma Chichi relaxed. It was one of Gunyenji's guardians, Brother Xiong's number. He seemed to be Huaxiao's assistant, so finding him should mean finding Huaxiao. But she didn't say anything. It wasn't convenient for her to leave a message with Brother Xiong there, so she hung up. She was anxious to go back and make another call, so she immediately put her phone away and waved at Brother Xiong. "Brother Xiong, take your time. I'll go back first." With that, she ran away. Brother Xiong was speechless. This girl. She really threw her away after using her. Brother Xiong was both angry and amused. He also felt a bit uncomfortable, but after a while he got busy with work and didn't care about Ma Chichi's attitude anymore. Ma Chichi returned to the dormitory and quickly called the number again. This time, when Yin Shixiang's message appeared, she left a message. May I ask if you are Nianji's guardian? I am her roommate, Chichi. My cell phone number is XXXXX. I have something important to tell you. It concerns Nianji. Please contact me immediately after you hear this message. You must contact me. This is a matter of life and death. The number Ma Chichi called was a special number that Hua Xiaoheng had set for Gu Nianji in the past. Whenever she called this number, the voicemail would immediately be picked up and forwarded to the relevant person. There were two people who would immediately receive messages from this number. One was Yin Shixiang and the other was Zhao Liangzi. Back then, in order to take care of Gu Nianji, they never went on missions at the same time. One would always go out while the other stayed in the country. If they missed anything related to Gu Nianji, Hua Xiaoheng would beat them up. But ever since Gu Nianji's father, Gu Xiangguan, was found, many of her security measures were secretly removed while Hua Xiaoheng was overseas on a mission. So this time, not only was Hua Xiaoheng on a mission, but Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi were also sent out at the same time. However, Hua Xiaoheng's arrangements at the time were too strict, so some things were still left. It wasn't that the people who removed her security measures were merciful, but they simply didn't know about these measures or rather forgot about them. For example, Gu Nianji's diamond earrings with a GPS system. Another was the contact number of the family member on her personal profile. These should have been cancelled as well, but because there were too many of them and they were too complicated, he didn't complete the operation, so he left a way out. Although no one was keeping an eye on Gu Nianji's location 24 hours a day, the diamond earring with the GPS system was not retrieved from Gu Nianji. If anything happened, the various satellite systems would be activated immediately and her location could be redetermined in minutes. There was also that number. There was no dedicated operator now, but the number could still be connected. After a while, the messages would automatically enter Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi's dedicated phone systems. However, they were currently out on a mission, so they couldn't answer the calls yet. Ma Chichi left this message and started counting down the days for Yin Shixiang to call back. Hua Xiaoheng waited in New York for another month. It was almost October, but the other party still hadn't made a move. He even suspected that he had been misled by James. But he was still able to keep his composure. In their line of work, the most important thing was to be patient. On this day, he went to inspect the vicinity of the 3 apartments he had rented. The one with 1 bedroom and living room on the east side was located in a more middle-class neighborhood. There was only 1 apartment building there, and the others were all townhouses. In the morning, he went to the apartment to check the mailbox and found nothing. Then, he went to the Starbucks opposite the apartment to have a cup of coffee and read a book on his Amazon Kindle for a while. He was no different from the people around him, then walked out calmly and boarded the train to the west side of the city. The train rattled all the way to the west side of the city. It was all rented apartments, and the houses were densely packed together like matchboxes. Although it was very neat, it didn't look like New York at all. Most of the people living here were artists from all over the world, or self-proclaimed artistic youth. Hua Xiaoheng also went to check the mailbox and threw away a few pieces of junk mail. Then he went to the KFC in the neighborhood to buy a large family bucket and finished eating alone under the sun. It was already around 1 in the afternoon. The last place was the north side of the city. The apartment in the north side of the city was in a very good area. It had once been a boudoir built by a tycoon for his lover. Later, the two broke up, and the boudoir was converted into an apartment for rent. From the outside, it looked like a very grand and unique mansion. There were so many windows that it looked like a school. Now, it was divided into small rooms and rented out to the city's new petty bourgeoisie who liked to keep a low profile but didn't have much money. On this day, Hua Xiaoheng had just walked near the neighborhood when he sensed something was wrong. It felt too different from the past. He had been here many times before. The atmosphere here was graceful and elegant. The people's footsteps were leisurely, and their expressions were relaxed. The men and women were all dressed up and ready to go to a cocktail party at any time. There were handsome men and women everywhere. However, as soon as he stepped into the neighborhood today, Hua Xiaoheng sensitively sensed that many people were dressed differently than the original residents here. Of course, most people wouldn't be able to notice this subtle difference. Only people like Hua Xiaoheng, who had not only received professional training but also had a keen intuition for the environment after thousands of life and death missions, could truly feel it. For example, in the eyes of the average person, there was a man and a woman drinking coffee in the open-air cafe in front of them. They were no different from the people next to them. They were all dressed very well in warm, collared shirts. The man was wearing formal pants of the same color, and the woman was wearing a straight skirt that barely covered her knees. However, in Huo Xiaoheng's eyes, there was a significant difference between these two people and the people next to them. This was because the new petty bourgeoisie here liked to keep a low profile. When they wore collared shirts, they definitely wouldn't button the collar tightly. They would definitely unbutton the first two buttons to reveal their slender necks and half-covered collarbones. There was also a woman. She also had short chestnut hair. The real residents here all knew that meticulously combed hair that was so shiny that flies would slip on it was very old-fashioned. The stylish women used their hands to comb their short hair a few times to reveal a somewhat messy but not ridiculously messy, lazy and natural style. They looked like they had just gotten out of bed. Also, when they looked at people, the residents here were used to wearing flirtatious smiles. They were the kind that could immediately go to bed and have sex if they saw eye to eye. It wasn't that some people sitting or standing here looked at people directly, as if they wanted to see through your heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. They were afraid that others wouldn't know that you didn't look at people with your eyes, but with searchlights and x-rays. This kind of awkwardness made Huo Xiaoheng immediately separate these people from the real residential area here. He noticed these differences, but he didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he casually walked over with his long legs and entered a convenience store with a slightly sinister smile on his lips. A few stylish women who were shopping in the convenience store saw him and couldn't help but be attracted to him. They kept throwing flirtatious glances at him, but he only smiled and didn't say anything. With a faint glance, those women's bones were about to melt. The people who had originally noticed him because of his extremely eye-catching appearance immediately looked away uninterestedly and continued to look around the street. Huo Xiaoheng walked around the convenience store like this, and then walked out of the street side by side with a stylish woman. Once they reached the corner, he immediately moved aside, called a taxi and left. If he wasn't wrong, the trader had finally made his move. He waited for more than a month before making his move. He was really patient. Of course, he wasn't particularly patient. He wasn't very clear why the other party would suddenly make his move after more than a month. Normally, in this kind of situation, if he didn't make his move within 2 weeks of receiving the news, he would have to wait for half a year. Now it was more than a month. This kind of awkward time period in their line of work was a bit thought-provoking. Huo Xiaoheng took a taxi around New York City to make sure that no one was following him before returning to his residence in New Jersey. James should be delivering the letter to him soon, or the letter was already lying in the place they had agreed on, but Huo Xiaoheng hadn't gone to pick it up yet. To be honest, although James had reached a cooperative relationship with him, he didn't completely trust him. He believed that James had the same thoughts about him. This was the normal state of cooperation between two people in the opposing camp. It was also the normal way of thinking about human relationships in their line of work. It was impossible to completely trust the other party. If someone really completely trusted the trader or an insider, it could only be said that this kind of person would generally reincarnate a few more times than others. Such a naive person was not suitable for their line of work. Huo Xiaoheng sat in the spacious living room and poured himself a glass of beer. His mood was a bit heavy. He remembered very clearly which departments the 3 letters were sent to. The letter related to the North City condominium was sent directly to Chin Lai. He didn't expect it to really be Chin Lai. Could it really be Chin Lai? Huo Xiaoheng couldn't sort out his thoughts for a moment. He and Chin Lai had known each other for a long time, even before he had joined the army. The two of them could be said to have gotten to know each other through a fight. At that time he was still young and vigorous. He planned an operation by himself to go to the military general hospital and smuggle out his aunt's body. In the end, he was discovered by Chin Lai, who was still a genius intern at the time. He thought he was the kind of thief who did illegal things. The two of them fought. Of course, Chin Lai was beaten to the ground by him, but he was also forced to tell the truth by Chin Lai. After Chin Lai heard about it, he believed him without hesitation and helped him hide his aunt's body in the hospital's freezer. It could be said that it was impossible for his aunt's case to be cleared without Chin Lai's help in the end. Later, the two of them became closer and Huo Xiaoheng joined the army. A few years later, he reunited with Chin Lai at the Special Operations Forces he had founded. At this time, Chin Lai had already become a military doctor seconded from the Military General Hospital by the Special Operations Forces. He brought along his assistant Yi Zitan. This is the second night watch and the monthly pass is 300 plus night watch. Let's keep our promise, it's already the 4th night watch today. The 3rd night watch is 7 p.m., and the 4th night watch is 600 plus night watch, so it should be around 9 p.m. Come, don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly pass. The monthly pass is 900 and will continue tomorrow at the third night watch. Chapter 676. Hua Xiaoheng lit a cigarette for himself and sunk into the large sofa in the living room. The windows were open and the night breeze blew in, bringing with it the chill of late autumn. In New York, located in the northeast of the United States, the night already had the shadow of winter. The cool wind blew on his body, and the heat that had once surged up began to subside. As for Qinlai, no matter how he thought about it, he still didn't think it was him. However, the only address mentioned in the letter to Qinlai was the apartment in northern New York where the incident happened. That was where he was staying, even though it was just bait. The mole in the Special Operations Forces didn't hesitate to take the bait. If it wasn't Qinlai, then who was it? No matter who it was, it had to be someone close to Qinlai. Hua Xiaoheng played with the Zippo lighter in his hand and muttered to himself. His gaze quickly became determined. No, he couldn't let his emotions get the better of him. Qinlai still couldn't clear his name in this situation. Hua Xiaoheng was still waiting for the final news from James. Once it was confirmed, he would go to Cuba. Hua Xiaoheng didn't sleep that night. The next morning he went to a post office in northern New York. He rented a post office there, and when the matter was settled, James would deliver the letter. Hua Xiaoheng opened the mailbox in the post office and saw the letter he expected. He took the letter and returned to the apartment. Hua Xiaoheng opened the letter and quickly read it. As expected, James confirmed in the letter that their bureau had received information from the Wuxia Empire. It confirmed that the leader of the Special Operations Forces was secretly living in an apartment in northern New York. The letter also included a detailed address. Hua Xiaoheng expressionlessly opened his lighter and burned James' letter. He immediately went downstairs and found the management office to cancel the lease. He had lived there for almost 3 months. He had said he would rent for a year, but he had to go home immediately because of an emergency at home. Of course, he wouldn't get his security deposit back, but the lease could be cancelled. Hua Xiaoheng calmly completed the cancellation procedures. He placed everything in a suitcase and carried it out of the luxurious apartment in New Jersey. Hua Xiaoheng got into his rented SUV and drove directly to the New York pier. There was a place to return cars. After returning the SUV keys, Hua Xiaoheng found the gangsters on the dock and discussed the route to Cuba with them. He paid them a sum of money and boarded the ship that very night. As members of the Special Operations Forces, Hua Xiaoheng and the others had a thorough understanding of the gangs in every major city. Most of the time he had to deal with them. Whether it was to hide his identity or to facilitate transportation, they would always be there. Of course, among these people, there were also spies from the Special Operations Forces. Among the gangs in New York, the Hua gang was an important force that had risen in recent years. They were already on par with the old Sicilian and South American gangs. To this day, no one knew whether there was someone supporting him or not. In the middle of the night, a speedboat silently cut through the waves and sped towards the high seas. The United States and Cuba had just resumed diplomatic relations, so there were not many direct flights and ships. However, even if there was a suitable flight, Hua Xiaoheng would not take it. Because the fake identity he used when he entered the country was already known by the CIB. Although it was not impossible to board a plane with a fake passport, it would still leave traces. Hua Xiaoheng wanted to leave New York without anyone knowing so that no one would know where he was. Only when he safely reached Cuba could his mission status be considered over. Only then could he use his real identity to send a message back to the Hua nation and resume his work. After being suppressed in New York for so long, it was time to fight back. It would take about 2 days to enter the high seas from New York and then take a detour to Cuba. Hua Xiaoheng had not been idle during these 2 days. He had already planned the reorganization and purge of the Special Operations Forces. This mole had hidden itself so deeply that it almost caused him to capsize. So when did it start? Hua Xiaoheng thought about it carefully and still came to the same conclusion. This mole was probably a newbie who had just been recruited. He was not a veteran who had been in hiding for many years. From the obstacles the other party had caused him, it was impossible for him to hit the target in one hit. The other party knew his whereabouts and had done some things behind the scenes to finally bring him to New York. Faced with such a situation, the other party did not know what kind of bargaining chips the Special Operations Forces had in New York, or rather overseas. He knew how, but he didn't know why, so their betrayal could only temporarily disrupt his plan, but it wasn't serious enough to cost him his life. If it was a veteran who had been in hiding for many years, Hua Xiaoheng knew that it would not be so easy for him to leave the United States alive this time. However, the veteran had the foresight, and the newbie had the element of surprise so it could not be ignored. Sitting at the bow of the ship, Hua Xiaoheng looked at the rising sun in the distance and remained silent. He should feel relieved. After all, his comrades of many years were still standing with him and did not stab him in the back. The problem could only be the newbie. Now that he had found the key to the problem, it was much easier to solve it. Hua Xiaoheng had basically decided on a plan of action during the 2 days he was at sea. 2 days later, as soon as he arrived in Cuba, Hua Xiaoheng went to the Wuxia Imperial Consulate General in Cuba. This time he could directly reveal his identity and say that he had completed his mission and wanted to contact the Hua nation. The Cuban Consulate General asked him to use his special line to contact the Hua nation directly. When General Ji received Hua Xiaoheng's call, it was already noon in the imperial capital. "General Ji, my mission is completed." Hua Xiaoheng's voice came from the other end of the phone, and General Ji's depressed mood from the past few days was instantly swept away. "Ha, it's good that it's completed. It's good that it's completed." General Ji leaned back in his office chair. "Where are you now?" "I'm at the Cuban Consulate General." Hua Xiaoheng was also sitting on a chair, his body relaxed and relaxed. "General Ji, I need an official identity to appear in Cuba." No problem, no problem." General Ji hurriedly agreed. "I'll have little Zay meet you in Cuba, and at the same time, I'll have the military's external publicity department announce that you are visiting Cuba as the Deputy Secretary General of the Military Supreme Council. That way he could openly appear in front of the public." He had been missing for so many days and everyone related to him was anxious. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "That's settled then." After a pause he said to General Ji, "I still have work to do, and I hope General Ji can give me your full support and cooperation." Of course. Of course." General Ji knew that Hua Xiaoheng was about to retaliate. General Ji was also furious that Hua Xiaoheng had been in danger this time, and now there was also the matter with Guanyanji. But when he thought about how Hua Xiaoheng had been outwardly obedient but inwardly opposed to him, General Ji felt that he still needed to teach him a lesson so he wouldn't become more daring in the future. 1,000-mile dike can be destroyed by an ant's nest. Don't ignore kindness because it's small, and don't do evil because it's small. These were all ancient sayings. Therefore, General Ji didn't mention a word about Guanyanji's situation and only said, "Of course, normal work is your responsibility. Do it freely." Hua Xiaoheng hung up and looked at the action plan in front of him before immediately making another call. This call was directly to the Special Operations Forces Department of Discipline. The members of the Department of Discipline were similar to the military police in that they were used to catch insiders who broke the law. No one knew that the leader of the Department of Discipline, Zhou Qiyuan, was one of Hua Xiaoheng's other 2 hidden personal secretaries. With Hua Xiaoheng's position he should have 4 personal secretaries, but most people only knew Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi. Very few people knew who Hua Xiaoheng's other 2 personal secretaries were. "Qiyuan, I'm Hua Xiaoheng." Hua Xiaoheng introduced himself directly. Zhou Qiyuan, who was reading documents in his private office, suddenly stood up. "Hello, Chief." Hua Xiaoheng began to give orders expressionlessly. "Immediately lead the Department of Discipline to surround the Special Operations Forces hospital building. Arrest all the medical staff inside from the mail room to everyone in Qinlai's office, including Qinlai, and detain them separately." He paused before continuing, "The patients in the hospital are not allowed to go out, and no one is allowed to visit. Wait for me to come back." "Yes, Chief." Zhou Qiyuan was 2 years older than Hua Xiaoheng and was personally rescued by Hua Xiaoheng from the Myanmar jungle. Since then he had been one of Hua Xiaoheng's 2 hidden personal secretaries. "This is the 3rd night and we're keeping our word. It's the 4th night today. The 4th night's monthly vote is 600, so it should be around 9 p.m. Come, don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly vote. The monthly vote is 900, so we'll continue tomorrow." Chapter 677. Zhou Qiyuan was a man of action. He did not speak much and he always followed Hua Xiaoheng's orders unconditionally. His loyalty was even greater than Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi's. As soon as Hua Xiaoheng made the arrangements, Zhou Qiyuan immediately initiated the action. Putting down the phone he pressed the internal action button. Pass down the order. Seal the entrance to the base. Kill anyone who dares to force their way in. Team 1, Team 2. Immediately bring people to seal off the east and west directions of the hospital building. Team 3, Team 4, immediately bring people to seal off the north and south directions of the hospital building. Team 5, Team 6, Team 7, and Team 8, follow me into the building and arrest all the medical personnel inside. Zhou Qiyuan put down the phone, took down his belt from the wall and wrapped it around his waist. He expressionlessly put on the disciplinary committee's black and gold armband. He adjusted the hat on his head and quickly gathered his team downstairs with 4 guards. Yes, Chief. The disciplinary committee had a total of 9 teams. Team 8 often moved around and Team 9 was always elusive. Under the leadership of team leader Zhou Qiyuan, the 8 members of the disciplinary committee quickly arrived in front of the hospital building. It was noon, and the late autumn sun in D capital was not very hot. In the plaza in front of the hospital building, patients were walking in groups of 2s and 3s. Some of the medical personnel in white coats had just finished eating and were walking to the building. Some had just come down from upstairs to eat lunch. When the members of the disciplinary committee in black military uniforms with black and gold armbands sealed off the entire hospital building, both patients and medical personnel were shocked. They were actually considered the logistics personnel of the Special Operations Forces and had never seen such a scene. What happened? Why is the disciplinary committee here? Is it because Hu Xiao is not here, so someone is going to rebel? Nonsense. That's the disciplinary committee leader Zhou Qiyuan. Of all people rebelling, it won't be him. Everyone discussed, but they were forced into the hospital building by the members of the disciplinary committee. 09 Xiao Shuanet. A doctor was very unhappy and asked with a sullen face, "May I ask what is the meaning of this? Do you still have any concept of the law? I am only responsible for following orders. Please go and help with the investigation. As for the law, please go to the military court to talk about the law with the judge." Zhou Qiyuan had a poker face and waved his hand expressionlessly. The members of the Department of Discipline groups 5, 6, 7, and 8 entered the building in a single file. They covered the heads of all the medical staff in the building, put handcuffs on them, and dragged them into the Department of Discipline group's prison van. Chun Lai's office was on the top floor of the hospital building. He had just finished lunch and was talking to Yi Zitan about a recent liver transplant surgery. "Dr. Yi, what do you think is the probability of rejection after the surgery?" Chun Lai looked at the patient's data after the surgery and was still uncertain. Yi Zitan tilted her head and looked at the case file in Chun Lai's hands. She said thoughtfully, "This person's data isn't bad. There shouldn't be any rejection, right? Dr. Chen, your surgery skills are getting better and better." His tone was filled with admiration and joy as well as a little disappointment. Chun Lai's attention was focused on the case. He looked at it for a long time, then shook his head and said, "I don't think it's that optimistic. Let's observe it for a few days." Just as he put down the case report, he heard a series of loud footsteps coming from the corridor. Chun Lai looked over curiously. "Huh? What was that sound? It sounds like an army is coming." Yi Zitan was also very curious. She turned around and walked to the door. As soon as she saw a row of members of the disciplinary committee in black military uniforms with black and gold armbands, her face suddenly turned white. She turned around in a panic and said to Chun Lai, "Dr. Chen, it's the disciplinary committee." Just as she finished speaking, the disciplinary committee leader, Zhou Qiyuan, had already walked in front of her and said, "Dr. Yi, sorry for the offense. Take her away." A member took a step forward and put a black hood over Yi Zitan's head without any explanation. He then took out handcuffs to put them on her. Yi Zitan was scared out of her wits. She couldn't even stand straight. Her legs turned to jelly and she fell to the ground. She almost peed. Chun Lai saw this scene from inside the office and was also shocked. He froze for a moment before scrambling out from behind his desk and shouting, "Zhou Qiyuan, what are you doing?" "Dr. Chen, I'm just following orders. Please cooperate with us." Zhou Qiyuan waved behind him. "Take him down." Another member of the disciplinary committee came forward. This time he also put a hood over Chun Lai's head and handcuffed him. Chun Lai was completely dumbfounded. He said sternly, "Zhou Qiyuan, does Hu Xiao know you're doing this? If you dare touch me and Dr. Yi, Hu Xiao will skin you alive when he comes back. This is Hu Xiao's order. When he comes back, Dr. Chen can interrogate him personally," Zhou Qiyuan said slowly. Suddenly he smelled the pungent smell of urine. He looked down to see Yi Zitan, who was paralyzed on the ground, finally peeing in her pants. When Hu Xiaoheng gave the order to the disciplinary committee leader, Zhou Qiyuan, Zhao Liangzi had already been summoned. He immediately turned to Cuba to receive Hu Xiaoheng. Early the next morning, A large private plane from the Wuxia Empire landed at the Havana International Airport in Cuba. After the plane landed, Cuba still had to make some arrangements. The plane's doors would only open after the red carpet, reporters and TV stations were in place, and all the important people inside would exit the plane. Hua Xiaoheng, who was waiting there in advance, took advantage of the time before the plane officially opened to sneak onto the plane. When he boarded, no one knew that this man dressed like a Cuban staff member was the main person on this private plane. Zhao Liangzi was naturally already waiting in a private first-class cabin. As soon as Hua Xiaoheng entered, Zhao Liangzi stood up excitedly and saluted. "Hello, Chief." Hua Xiaoheng nodded at him and said calmly, "I'm going to change. Go outside and see how Cuba's preparations are going. Did anyone from our TV station come?" Zhao Liangzi quickly said, "Your military uniform is ready. It's here." As he spoke, he took out a stack of neatly folded Major General military uniforms from his suitcase. This time, it's our own TV station director from the Public Relations Department. Okay. Hua Xiaoheng responded simply and unfolded the military uniform. Zhao Liangzi quickly walked out and closed the door for Hua Xiaoheng. He stood at the door. This was a military plane. From the pilot to the flight attendants, they all reported directly to the military and all had military ranks. Hua Xiaoheng quickly changed into his official Major General military uniform. He put on a military cap, a pair of large sunglasses, white gloves, and a holster around his waist. There was a gun in the holster. He pulled it out and saw that it was fully loaded with 20 bullets. Not long after, Zhao Liangzi knocked on the door. "Chief, everything is ready. The President of the Cuban Supreme Military Council is here to welcome you." Hua Xiaoheng stood up and opened the door. He nodded to Zhao Liangzi. "You may leave." "Yes, Chief." Zhao Liangzi saluted again at the door and followed Hua Xiaoheng out with a smile. The two of them stood at the cabin door for a while. Soon the cabin door opened and Hua Xiaoheng stepped out. The sky in Havana was a verdant blue, like the finest sapphire that could not be melted. White clouds floated in the blue sky, as if they had been casually painted with a brush. The military song of the Cuban Revolutionary Army played in the square, and a flock of white pigeons flew into the sky. A red carpet stretched from the cabin door to a place far below the stairs. The President of the Cuban Supreme Military Council, wearing the uniform of the Cuban Revolutionary Army, stood near the stairs and smiled in Hua Xiaoheng's direction. Hua Xiaoheng waved at him, then walked down the plane's suspension ladder with steady steps. The television stations and news reporters from both countries were captivated by Hua Xiaoheng in his Major General uniform. All of them were mesmerized and raised their cameras to snap pictures. The directors of the television stations aimed their cameras only at Hua Xiaoheng. The President of the Cuban Supreme Military Council only had a chance to be on camera when he shook hands with Hua Xiaoheng. Zhao Liangzi followed Hua Xiaoheng. He sighed at the world where looks were the most important thing. At the same time, he marveled at his Major General's good looks and combat prowess. No wonder he was at the top of the food chain. This is the 4th update and the monthly vote is 600 plus updates. Let's keep our word, it's the 4th update today. Come on, don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly vote. The monthly vote will reach 900 before noon tomorrow, and we'll continue with the 3rd update. Chapter 678. Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to expose himself too much. He had cooperated with the Hua nation's private plane to make this trip to Cuba so that he could appear in this place with a proper identity. Therefore, after a brief discussion with the Cuban Supreme Military Council, he told General G that he would be returning home immediately. General G didn't agree. He sat behind his desk and smiled like a Maitreya Buddha. "Xiaoheng, think about it. If you leave as soon as you arrive, wouldn't you be exposing yourself? What would others think? What would those people who have been watching you think?" This made sense. He had to go through with the act. He had already taken 99 steps out of 100, so there was no need to waste all his efforts at the last step. Hua Xiaoheng knew that because of Mole's betrayal, the intelligence agencies of every country were probably watching his movements. "Yes, you're right." Hua Xiaoheng didn't object. "Then I'll wait a little longer. Since you're already in Cuba, you can learn from your peers there. You're now visiting Cuba as an official soldier, so you can take a look at Cuba's signal radar system. They're so close to the United States, so there must be something interesting there." "Ah." General G couldn't help but laugh at the happy part. Hua Xiaoheng replied, "Okay, I'll be careful. Well, since the private plane is already here, you can stay for as long as you want. It's best if you stay a few more days. I have an important political mission for you. General G's tone became serious. You know that the situation in the country is quite tense right now, and the election will be held in a few days. It's not appropriate for you to return now, so wait a little longer. It won't be too late to return after the election results are announced. Hua Xiaoheng was silent for a moment before replying, "Yes, sir." He couldn't return for now, so Hua Xiaoheng didn't contact Zhou Qiyuan in the Hua Nation. Zhou Qiyuan wasn't in a hurry either. He locked everyone up separately and began interrogating them one by one. He didn't know why Hua Xiaoheng locked them up, but they had to be interrogated as a routine. It was nothing more than asking about their resumes, daily affairs and social relations. It was like a political investigation but more stringent. Every question had to be supported by actual evidence, be it written or testimony from witnesses. Hua Guanchen sat in his office at the Special Operations Forces headquarters. He looked at the deputy chief of the Special Operations Forces, who had a serious expression on his face. It was just a simple field mission. Why were they gone? Did they run away? Defected? Or did something happen? It had been 2 days since the German field personnel were dispatched, and they could no longer contact them. Usually, when such a situation occurred, it meant that something had happened. It didn't matter if something happened. In this line of work, accidents could happen at any time. More importantly, the measures and means taken after the accident must be swift and without delay. However, the problem was that Hua Guanchen had no background in intelligence work. Once something went wrong, he had no experience in how to remedy the situation or how to avoid greater losses. Disappeared? Then what should we do? What about Gunyanji? Did you find it? Hua Guanchen raised his voice. Is this how you complete the mission the organization gave you? The deputy chief was furious, but he could not vent his anger on General Hua. He could only lower his head and remain silent as Hua Guanchen scolded him. Hua Guanchen angrily slammed the table and stood up. What do you mean by not saying anything? Hurry up and send more people to look for him. The deputy chief finally raised his head to look at Hua Guanchen, who was fuming with rage. He said calmly, "General Hua, we still haven't figured out what's going on. We can't rashly send out more people." What? Because we can't determine whether that location is the real Miss Gu or the enemy's trap. The deputy chief didn't want to send his men to their deaths again. Not to mention that the 2 people had disappeared without a trace. It was also a troublesome matter. For Gunyanji, they had already lost 2 field personnel and needed to send more field personnel. Were there people like radishes that could be plucked and used at any time? The deputy chief felt that this matter had to be considered at length. Hua Guanchen listened to the deputy chief's words and slowly sat back down. It was undeniable that the deputy chief made a lot of sense. Also, Hua Guanchen suddenly felt that this wasn't a bad idea. It wasn't that he didn't want to search, but something had happened to the field personnel of the Special Operations Forces, so they couldn't continue to be dispatched. Okay, then do as you see fit. I have full authority to solve this for you. Hua Guanchen took out a pen and wrote a note for the deputy chief. General G specifically reminded us to keep this a secret from your chief for now. It won't be too late to talk about it after we find Miss Gu. You have to remember that if anyone reveals this to your chief, he will be punished according to military law. I will not show any mercy. I believe that General G thinks the same way. Yes, chief. The deputy chief had no objections and didn't dare to. But if he didn't let Hua Xiaoheng know about this, who could solve it? If Hua Xiaoheng was in the Wuxia Empire, the deputy chief could make the trip himself. But he was now abroad, so the deputy chief couldn't go abroad. Both of them had to maintain that one of them stayed in the Wuxia Empire and couldn't go abroad at the same time. It was just like when both of them took a plane, they couldn't take the same flight at the same time. They had to leave separately. After thinking about it, he could only think of Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi. These 2 were Hua Xiaoheng's personal secretaries and were very capable themselves. Also, they had followed Hua Xiao from the beginning to the end for Gunyanji. The 2 field agents disappeared because of Gunyanji, so they should know about it for both official and personal reasons. They should follow up on it to see if it had anything to do with Gunyanji's disappearance. Also, General G had ordered that Hua Xiao not know about this for now, but he didn't say that no one else could know. Also, this matter wasn't a secret among the higher-ups of the Special Operations Forces. In order to locate Gunyanji's satellite, all the personnel involved in the satellite orbit adjustment knew everything they needed to know. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi just happened to be on a mission abroad. Zhao Liangzi had just been sent to Cuba by General G to assist Hua Xiao's visit. He had no choice but to quickly summon Yin Shixiang back to the Wuxia Empire to deal with this matter. Yin Shixiang had originally been sent to Japan and was only halfway through his mission there when he suddenly received an urgent transfer order from the Special Operations Forces to immediately return to the Wuxia Empire. Even the plane tickets had been booked for him, and he was about to board the plane with his suitcase. He was a soldier, so it was his duty to obey orders. Yin Shixiang didn't say anything else and immediately boarded the plane. The flight from Tokyo to the imperial capital only took 3 hours. Yin Shixiang boarded the plane at 5 in the afternoon and arrived at the imperial capital international airport at 8 in the evening. However, because of the time difference, it was already 9 in the evening in the imperial capital. His adjutant came to pick him up. He opened the car door with a serious expression and invited him in. Yin Shixiang nodded and sat in the front passenger seat. He asked his adjutant, "Tell me what happened?" His adjutant started the car and simply said, "Something happened to 2 people outside." In their professional terminology, people outside referred to field personnel, and "something happened" meant that they had died in the line of duty. Yin Shixiang's heart sank. Although this kind of thing wasn't rare, he still felt bad every time he heard such news. Those people were all their comrades. No soldier would be indifferent to the news of their comrades' deaths unless they didn't see them as comrades. "Okay, we'll talk about it when we get back," Yin Shixiang said dryly and didn't ask any more questions. After returning to the Special Operations Forces, Yin Shixiang didn't go back to his residence at all. Instead, he went directly to the headquarters base and returned to his room in Hua Xiao's official residence. He and Zhao Liangzi both had their own rooms there, as well as a study and a conference room. It was like 2 separate small suites. After taking a shower and changing clothes, Yin Shixiang dried his hair and went to the kitchen to find something to eat. He then informed his team members, "We'll be having a meeting in 10 minutes. All personnel on duty and officers above the rank of colonel must be present." After notifying them of the meeting, Yin Shixiang went to the safe and took out the phone he had prepared in the Wuxia Empire. It was already out of battery. Yin Shixiang took it to the conference room and plugged it in to charge while waiting for everyone to start the meeting. He arrived early and waited for a while before the phone's battery was turned on. He swiped it open and saw an important message in the voicemail. The message was from Gun Yinji's external contact number. This was the first update. Today was Monday and they had forgotten their recommendation tickets. It looked like they still had to do 4 updates today. This included a monthly ticket of 900 plus updates and a leader plus update. Congratulations to Raindrop 6868 for becoming the new leader of the Major General. Thank you to Raindrop 6868 for the 90,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to Whose Heart is Sweeter Candy for the 10,000 reading points yesterday. The second update would be 12 noon, the third update would be 7 p.m., and the fourth update would be around 9 p.m. Come on, don't be careless and cast your guaranteed monthly tickets. Chapter 679. On Yin Shixiang's and Zhao Liangzi's phones, Gun Yinji's number was marked as an important contact number. Therefore, whenever there was a message, it would be picked up immediately. However, after so long, almost no one had called this number ever since Gun Yinji had become an adult. What was it about this time? Yin Shixiang was very surprised and quickly pressed the button to answer. A clear and somewhat anxious female voice came from his Bluetooth headset. "Are you Yinji's guardian? I'm her roommate, Chi-Chi. My phone number is XXXXX. I have something important to tell you. It concerns Yinji. Please contact me immediately after you hear this message. You must contact me. This is a matter of life and death." Yin Shixiang was speechless. Okay, what was going on? He had only been away from the Wuxia Empire for 20 days. Why didn't he understand Chinese? He remembered Gun Yinji's roommate, Ma Chi-Chi. She was tall, straightforward, and always had a smile on her face. He hadn't expected her to drop such a huge bomb on him. Yin Shixiang felt a bit dizzy. He rubbed his temples and sat for a while before listening to the message again. Just as he was about to call Ma Chi-Chi back, the people he had called for the meeting arrived one after another. He said 10 minutes, so it was 10 minutes. No one arrived after 10 minutes. Yin Shixiang had no choice but to put down his phone and nod to everyone. "Sit. I called for a meeting today to ask what exactly happened. The Deputy General summoned me back, but I haven't gone to see him yet. I want to hear what happened recently." His adjutant had already told him in the car that something had happened to 2 field personnel, but he didn't make it clear what exactly had happened, such as where, when, and for what reason. Now that they were in the Special Operations Forces encrypted office, everyone could speak freely. 09 Small say, Net In Shixiang's other deputy immediately stood up and said, "Sir, it's like this. We lost contact with 2 of our field personnel during a mission in Germany. It's been almost 3 days now." Germany? The word Berlin, in Ma Qiqi's voice message flashed through In Shixiang's mind. The capital of Germany was Berlin. Could it be related to Nianji? In Shixiang's skin tightened. He calmly clenched his fists and slowly loosened them. "What are you going to do in Germany?" "I don't remember going on a field mission in Germany recently." "We're not sure about that. You'll have to ask the deputy chief." His adjutant shook his head. "You know, this is the rule. We won't ask about the details of our comrades' missions." In Shixiang choked. Indeed, his adjutant and his team members were not at this level, so they could not inquire about other people's affairs, nor could they tell others the details of their field missions. If he did, he would be violating confidentiality rules. But he could tell his superior. For example, Hua Xiaoheng and his 2 personal secretaries were of very high rank and had the authority to know the details of the Special Operations Forces personnel's field work. "Okay, then I'll go see the deputy chief. You guys wait for me here." In Shixiang immediately stood up and went to the deputy chief's office building. The deputy commander had been extremely busy these few days. He had to find out the reason for the disappearance of the 2 field personnel and give a detailed and clear explanation to his superiors and subordinates. Otherwise, he would have to take responsibility. He called In Shixiang back because he wanted him to take responsibility for this matter. At the same time, he wanted to find out if it had anything to do with Gu Nianji's disappearance. As soon as In Shixiang arrived at the deputy chief's office building, he was immediately led inside. "Lieutenant Colonel In, please come in. The deputy chief has been waiting for you." 09 Xiao Shuanet. He should have gotten off work at this time, but the deputy chief knew that he would be back at this time, so he had not gone home. In Shixiang walked in front of the deputy chief and saluted. "Reporting to Chief, Lieutenant Colonel In Shixiang reporting for duty." "Okay, Lieutenant Colonel In, please sit." The deputy chief quickly pointed to the sofa in front of him. "There's an important reason why I called you back so urgently this time." In Shixiang quickly sat upright on the sofa and rested his hands on his knees. He said very seriously, "Please speak. I was just wondering." "It's like this." The deputy chief sighed. "This matter started 4 days ago." In Shixiang's heart pounded, and he suddenly had a very bad feeling. 4 days ago, General G suddenly received a briefing from the deputy consul of our country's consulate in Munich, Germany. He said that a citizen of our country named Gu Nianji had gone missing in Munich. Lieutenant Colonel In, when we received the news, it had already been 17 or 18 days since she disappeared. In Shixiang felt his vision go black when he heard that. So it really was related to Gu Nianji. So Gu Nianji really had met with danger in Germany? But wait, Ma Qiqi's message said that Gu Nianji had met with danger in Berlin, but the deputy chief said it was in Munich. In Shixiang was a bit anxious. He really wanted to go to the central control room immediately to get Gu Nianji's GPS location. That way he wouldn't have to worry about whether it was in Munich or Berlin. However, the deputy chief's next words saved him from that dilemma. General G handed this matter over to General Hua. General Hua found us and asked if we could find a way to find Gu Nianji. As you know, Gu Nianji was already a key protected target in our department. Although her security measures have been revoked, but... Deputy Chief, Gu Nianji's security measures have been revoked? Why didn't we know about this? In Shixiang was shocked and interrupted him. When did this happen? Gu Nianji's security measures were personally set up by Hua Xiaoheng. In the past she was perfectly protected. Perhaps it was too well protected, but in those 6 years, no one actually came looking for Gu Nianji. They also couldn't find any information related to Gu Nianji's background. Later, Hua Xiaoheng decided to let her go out and interact with society. At the same time, more people would notice her. This might help them find out about her background. It had to be said that this strategy was very correct. Soon all sorts of contact and tests began on Gu Nianji. They went with the flow and finally found Gu Nianji's father, Gu Xiangguan, and found out about her background. However, Hua Xiaoheng hadn't said anything yet. Who had the guts to revoke Gu Nianji's security measures? The deputy chief was stunned. This was an order from the military Supreme Council. I was also following orders. In Shixiang nodded. Okay then, deputy chief, please keep the order. When Hua Xiaoheng comes back, he will definitely ask about this. Of course, I've already saved it according to procedure. When Huo Xiaoheng comes back he can investigate at any time. The deputy chief said confidently. He even took out a copy for Yin Shixiang to see. Here, this is it. Yin Shixiang glanced at it and said, since it's a copy, can you give me a copy, deputy chief? Sure, the original is on file. There are many copies. You can take it. The deputy chief knew that Yin Shixiang was Huo Xiaoheng's personal secretary. Giving it to him was equivalent to giving it to Huo Xiaoheng. Yin Shixiang carefully put the copy of the military order in his folder and continued to listen to the deputy chief explain. Where were we? Oh, we removed her security measures, but there were some measures we didn't have time to remove, such as the GPS on her. At the time, I asked the staff in the central control room to use the GPS to locate Gunyanji and found that she was in Berlin. Yin Shixiang's eyes widened as he interrupted the deputy chief again. Berlin? It's really Berlin? Didn't you say it was in Munich? Yes. You were confused too, right? So were we, so we sent 2 field agents to Berlin to see what was going on. And then? Then our field agents went to the coordinates shown by the GPS, and then there was nothing else. The deputy chief spread his hands. Our communication with them was cut off almost instantly, and we couldn't contact them anymore. Yin Shixiang's brows furrowed even tighter. He immediately realized that Ma Qiqi's message wasn't groundless. It was true. Why didn't you inform Huo Xiaoheng immediately when such a big thing happened? Yin Shixiang was a bit unhappy, but he didn't show it on his face. I heard that Huo Xiaoheng's mission was already completed. General Hua and General Ji told Huo Xiaoheng not to know about this before he returns. Whoever dares to tell will be dealt with according to military law without mercy. Yin Shixiang was speechless. But I think it's best if you lead the investigation, so I summoned you back. The deputy chief leaned over and patted his shoulder. Big Xiong, you have to work hard. Yin Shixiang immediately said, I know. I'll go now. There's a lot of work to be done. The deputy chief didn't ask him to stay and watched him leave. Yin Shixiang didn't return to his conference room either. Instead, he found a car and sped to B University to look for Ma Qiqi. This was the second monthly pass of 900 plus updates. I forgot the recommendation list. The third update was at 7 p.m., and the fourth update should be around 9 p.m. Come on, don't be careless and cast the guaranteed monthly pass. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.